For some reason, the protagonist of this story, Lest Albion, has been reincarnated into the world of the game he played countless times. Lest is a villainous noble, and by the middle of the story, he's destined to die. For the first years he was reincarnated into the world, Lest lived quite a normal life and had only regained his memories of his past life during a special ritual where 14-year-olds like him receive a skill from the goddess, called the Divine Oracle Ceremony. During this trial, Lest was said to have been granted a skill called Tame, a skill that is considered trash by the people of this world, as it only controls stuff like horses or pigeons. Upon hearing this, Lest's father was furious. For generations now, the Albion bloodline has always been renowned for producing elite swordsmen, so he's expecting that his son can at least receive a combat skill like Sword Saint, or something from the martial arts line. But with Lest receiving such a useless non-combat skill, his father was quick to decide to abandon him, as he sees Lest unworthy of the Albion name. Even Lest's older brother started making fun of him, degrading and insulting him because of his skill. Both fighting for the position as heir, Lest's two older brothers are rather delighted that having an incompetent younger brother will make their competition much easier. Witnessing how Lest's family is taking in this news, the priest tried to uplift Lest's spirit by telling him not to let this get to him too much. The priest is certain there must be a bigger reason why Lest was granted this skill. During that moment, Lest finally remembered that he's a character in Symphonia of Sword and Sorcery, the game he used to play in his past life. What fascinated him the most was the fact that he wasn't reincarnated as the protagonist, but instead into the villain's role. So if things still follow the game's events, Lest will end up getting killed by the Demon King's army executive in the middle of the story. And as a hardcore player who completed every route, Lest is certain that no matter which route he takes, he will always die. After going through the Divine Oracle Ceremony, Lest tried to break down everything that happens in the game, beginning with the skill Tame. Normally, Tame is a worthless skill that is only good for controlling livestock at best, but in truth, Tame could control more than just livestock, since it could also control monsters. In the original story, Lest didn't realize his identity until much later. By then, years of persecution had already twisted his heart, ending up with him using Tame to hurt people. Because of his overwhelming power, he became a target of the Demon King's army. So in the end, they stole his power and killed him. Knowing this, Lest knows that even if he tries everything to avoid that death flag, as long as he has this power, the Demon King's army will definitely come after him. At this point, he starts to wonder how he will be able to crush that death flag.
Before we continue, I have something very special for you. Have you ever wanted to watch a show on a streaming platform only to find out it's only available in another country? Like the other day during the holidays, I wanted to rewatch The Grinch and it turned out to be available on Netflix in Australia. So what did I do? I downloaded a secure VPN from private internet access to access Netflix from a Sydney IP address, and bam, Christmas was saved. Honestly, my experience so far has been great. I can now even connect to the Wi-Fi at cafes and restaurants without worrying about anyone using it to hack me because my VPN keeps my internet connection encrypted and my personal information safe. So, I partnered with Private Internet Access, the sponsor of this video, to bring you an amazing deal. Through the link in the description and in the pinned comment, you can get an amazing 83% discount on their VPNs, and they'll even throw in 4 extra months for free just for you. So, in the end, you just pay $2.03 per month. Click on my exclusive link and choose from any of the 91 countries available to start watching those shows and movies you've always wanted to watch but couldn't access before.
With the knowledge he has of the game, Lest decides to use this to become strong and take over the country with one hand. Since he still has 1 year to go before the story begins, Lest plans on doing a mountain of things to be able to survive his ugly fate. But before he could be able to do that, he needed to first survive his family's rather toxic nature. One day during dinner, Lest's twin brothers, Edward and Sidward, went on to show off to their father, Gad Albion Marquis, seemingly to try to compete for his attention. Seeing how fired up these two boys are, their mother was quick to feel proud of her sons, except for Lest, who she calls a disappointment because of his trash skills. His brothers then started insulting him as well, stating that if he'd only been born into a livestock handler's family, his skill would have been perfect. Lest, who is just minding his own business, then tries to speak for himself. However, his father was quick to shut him off, saying that he doesn't even care about anything that Lest is about to say. With his family now acting like bullies, Lest decides to excuse himself and go for a walk. It's already been a week since he got his memories back. He started to piece a few things together, but unfortunately, he can't check his stats like in the game. However, as he got accustomed to this world, he then realized that this world does have similar mechanics, just like in the game, where players need to defeat monsters to boost their abilities. Knowing this, for Lest to level up, he needs to train and kill as many monsters as he can. In the game, the basic rule is that he can only tame monsters that he personally defeats. So if Lest wants to control stronger monsters, he'll need to boost his stats to be able to defeat one in the first place. And one way to do that is with a daily event from the game called the Midnight Training, aka the Midnight Grind. In the game, one could choose one of 5 types of training each day, and each one raised a specific stat. But in this world, Lest doesn't need to do it at midnight since he's not limited to just one session a day. So as long as he does every type of training daily, he's certain that he can get stronger at an insane pace. But aside from increasing his physical strength, he also plans on refining his magic powers. Thanks to the memories of Lest, who has lived in this world up until now, he has now managed to get through his first magic refinement session smoothly. In fact, even his body is above average, showcasing how Lest must have been working himself to the bone until now. Even though in the game, Lest always came off as some lazy slacker, the despair after getting that tame skill must have pushed him to do better and aim to become stronger. With that said, after doing his usual training, Lest decides to head back to the mansion to rest. But on his way back, he came across his two bully brothers, who were now on their way to do their sword training as well. Just as usual, they kept on teasing him around, making him feel like he was useless. Edward, who has the skill of a great sword wielder, and Sidward with his swordsman skill, it's apparent why these two really look down on their younger brother. In the midst of their conversation, a girl came into the scene, shocking the mates, Lest, and even the twins. For some reason, this girl carried a gigantic earth dragon to their field and told the twins that she personally took care of it on her way here. Elna Labrizzle is the personal trainer of Lest's brothers. Even though she is only 18, she already holds the title of S-rank adventurer and is known to be a genius swordsman. However, Lest doesn't know anything about this girl as she doesn't appear in the game, and this is something he only learned from Lest's own memories. S-rank adventurers were pretty common in the game, but seeing it up close like this is seriously overwhelming. Witnessing how great Elna is, Lest couldn't help but feel a little jealous and frustrated that he can't be trained by someone like her. 2 hours later, at Albion's family grand training hall, Elna is literally making the twins have such a hard time during training. While they're at it, Lest hides as he tries to see more of Elna's skills. Just as he expected, Elna is indeed such a strong warrior. But still, seeing her fight against two guys with sword-type skills and treating them like toddlers really amazes Lest. Because of exhaustion, the twins ended up giving up in the end. Witnessing this, although Lest can still raise his stats through training, he knows that he can't really learn real combat skills by himself. Since Elna only visits the Albion estate once a month for sword training, Lest can't afford to waste this chance, as he wanted to ask her to train him as well. However, before he can even go on and ask her himself, Elna has already taken notice of him, and before he even realizes it, Elna is already behind him, moving like a ninja. Lest then introduces himself, and Elna immediately knows who he is. After seeing how amazing Elna trained those two, although a little shy to ask, Lest gathered all his courage and told Elna that he also wanted to get strong, asking her to teach him how to fight with the sword. However, Lest was quick to tell her that tame isn't technically a skill made for combat, trying to explain to her that this was the reason why he wasn't selected for her training. Aside from that, Elna is also certain that without a sword-type skill, Lest will never survive her regimen anyway. Even so, Lest still wanted to get stronger, and seeing the eagerness in his eyes gave Elna no choice but to grant him his wish. Faster than lightning, Elna quickly handed Lest a wooden sword to see what he got. She wants him to show her whether he is even worth training, and to prove that, Elna wants him to use his own hands. Elna's moves were as fast as lightning. Her every strike was heavy, just showcasing she is already on another level. Even though she is clearly holding back, Lest knows that as soon as he drops his guard, he'll black out in an instant. However, no matter how much Lest tried to, Elna's power is just beyond his strength to be able to take on. It has been more than 10 minutes since they started fighting, and Lest's legs won't even hold him up anymore. Seeing how exhausted Lest already is, Elna decided to stop the fight for now. So Lest immediately asks for Elna's critique. Elna then went on to state that he's not even close enough, as his physical ability barely meets the minimum. And as for his swordsmanship, he's practically a total beginner at this point. However, Elna is curious to know why Lest is even eager to seek such great power. Is it because he wants to master the sword, surpass his brothers perhaps, or is it something else? With much dedication, he goes on to confidently state that he's doing this because he wants to win against fate itself. Now this shocked Elna as she never witnessed such dedication with her other students, so she ended up giving Lest 30 minutes of her time for training. As soon as she is done with the other two, she'll give Lest 30 minutes of instruction as well. But she still reminded him that if she catches him slacking even a little, she'll stop immediately, which is something that Lest immediately assured he'll never do. Since Elna will not be seeing him for another month or so, Lest will have to train by himself and aim to become strong before their next meetup. Fast forward, 2 months have already passed, and today's the 3rd day of Lest's training with Elna. At first, Elna thought that Lest hadn't improved yet, as his moves are quite predictable. However, to her surprise, he actually has moves which he calls techniques that other students haven't shown her before. In the game, techniques are just as essential as skills, maybe even more. They are known as finishing moves that let one exceed their physical limits. For the last 2 months, Lest managed to learn one of them. Although it's just a single strike move, it helps boost his sword speed and power, and it is called the Blade Surge Full Drive, the Flash Step. For the first time in her teaching career, this is the first time Elna came across a student who was actually close to hitting her. But since she is far stronger, she still managed to block Lest's attack. Although Lest is looking all frustrated now, thinking that his hard work these past few months wasn't enough, Elna on the side is so speechless at Lest's shocking growth, The fact that he is only learning swordsmanship for 2 months, and yet he's already on par with his brothers who started 6 months earlier, is truly amazing. Although it's pretty obvious that Lest must have put in blood, sweat, and tears during his training, but even that doesn't fully explain all of this. On top of that, the flash step technique that he used a while ago was also designed for sword skill users. So for someone without a proper combat class to pull it off, even with natural talent, it should have taken at least a full year to learn. But surprisingly, Les managed to do it in just 2 months, making Elna wonder if she might be nurturing a true gem, an extraordinary talent beyond imagination. Meanwhile, although Les is feeling a bit down because he hadn't managed to land a hit on Elna even once, he's still feeling quite blessed since thanks to her, he's now improved a bit. Up to this point, everything has gone smoothly for him, so he thought that as long as he is careful not to encounter the protagonist or any other characters who are supposed to become his enemies, Les is sure that he'll be able to overcome his fate. But suddenly their father, the Marquis, informs him that one night that Charlotte, the second prince, is coming to their estate. Les immediately tried to remember who this character may be. Then he finally realized that she is the main heroine in the game, who is the second princess of the Finale Kingdom, which is Lest's walking death flag. If Lest had to describe her character in the game in one phrase, she is the perfect princess through and through. Just like any young royal, she's curious about the world and quick to befriend anyone. She has a pure heart and is considerate regardless of social status. Despite being blessed with extraordinary talent, she's a justice-driven character who constantly trains to protect her people. But precisely because she was that kind of person, she couldn't forgive Lest's actions that hurt others. So in the middle of the story, Charlotte stands alongside the protagonist to confront the rampaging Lest. As a result of that battle, Lest ends up getting killed by a demon lord executive. But at least according to the game's lore, there shouldn't have been any connection between Lest and Charlotte at this point, so Lest wonders why the plot has changed all of a sudden. Well, as it turned out, Elna also worked as the royal family sword instructor, and she did mention something to Her Highness about a talented swordsman of the same age in the Albion family. With Charlotte so impressed, she decides to meet that person personally. Thinking that it's either of the twins, the Marquis and his wife are delighted for their children. Little did they know it's actually Lest the princess is interested in. Realizing that he might have changed the game scenario, Lest immediately tried to think of a way to fix it. 2 weeks later, the day of the official visit has finally arrived. Lest, together with his brothers, waited for the princess's arrival. However, the twins immediately went on to tell Lest to stay away, with them confidently under the impression that the princess was interested in them. Lest didn't even hesitate and took his leave immediately. While his brothers are busy attending Charlotte, Lest plans on making use of his spare time to fight some monsters. The Arts Forest is a monster habitat that spreads across the Albion family's territory. The Albion family forbids entry until one enrolls in the Royal Academy. Since Lest doesn't want to stand out too much for now, he decides not to go through his plan for now. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the princess has finally arrived, and the twins together with the Marquis are now having a tea party with her. Aside from her sparkling beauty, the twins were also amazed by Charlotte's skill, which is called the Holy Sword Princess. This is a top-tier skill that gives strong boost to both holy magic and swordsmanship, which is something that surpasses their older brother's Sword Saint skill at the academy. The princess then asks if she could see them spar, to which the twins are delighted to do immediately. However, to their surprise, Charlotte is not reacting that amusedly to their fight, considering their skills are not particularly surprising at all. However, upon seeing this, the twins immediately try to think of a way to make sure that the princess doesn't lose interest in them. So without considering the consequences and the danger it may inflict on them, the twins decided to show the princess a real combat by fighting off monsters in the Arst Forest. Upon hearing this, Charlotte was shocked since the boys' strength didn't really show that they were already fit to fight such monsters. But because of their overconfidence, the boys immediately assured the princess that they could pull it off. Charlotte was contemplating whether she should let them go or not, but with the twins' assurance, she had no other choice but to see what they had. Moments later, the twins, together with Princess Charlotte and her personal assistant, finally make it inside the forest. The frightfulness in Charlotte's eyes is so apparent that she's actually starting to sweat a bit. The forest is quite dark, even though it's still daytime. Despite the danger, the boy still went on to assure the princess with a smile that everything was under control. While they were there, the princess suddenly remembered that the brothers still have another sibling who is in the same grade as she is, so she immediately asked them where Les could be. Upon hearing this, the twins looked at each other and immediately gave Charlotte that awkward smile. They then went on to lie that Les went out on his own, thinking that Charlotte wouldn't want to meet him at all, considering his skill is tame. In the middle of their conversation, a grey wolf, which is classified as an E-rank monster, suddenly appeared and launched a surprise attack on the group. Thankfully, the twins managed to quickly react and eliminate the threat with ease. However, despite their initial success, it became clear to the princess that the twins' abilities were not as remarkable as she had hoped. Meanwhile, Estella, who is the princess's assistant, seemingly sensed something ominous and immediately suggested that it might be better for them to leave now. Confused as to why, Charlotte asks her why. Estella then revealed that she was feeling that danger was approaching them and thought that it was better for the princess to leave. However, the twins, who were still eager to prove themselves, insisted they stay a little longer, until a more formidable enemy emerged, a C-rank Gale Wolf that is much more dangerous than the previous one that attacked them earlier. The beast then charges at them with great speed, and Estella quickly steps in, blocking its initial attack. She then asked the twins to take the princess and leave immediately, which they did. However, while they were on the run, another wolf appeared, cornering them and cutting off their escape. With no other option, the princess was forced to use her magic, as the twins struggled to even land a single blow on the enemy. Despite her efforts, the Gale Wolf's overwhelming strength began to wear her down, putting her in a dangerous situation. Just as the creature was about to strike a fatal blow, help arrived as Lest intervened, completely blocking the monster's attack and saving the princess from her death. A few minutes earlier, Lest managed to notice Princess Charlotte along with her maid Estella going into the Arst Forest with his brothers. Without hesitation, Lest rushes to follow them, knowing how dangerous the Forbidden Forest is. Realizing that his brothers are doing this to impress the princess, Lest doesn't even hesitate and sprints to ensure he will make it in time. While the group is walking through the forest, Lest tried to remain discreet and just watch over them in the shadows, hiding from one tree to another. Most of the monsters in the forest are low ranked, so the twins should be able to handle them. But if by chance they encounter something powerful and Charlotte ends up getting hurt or at worst ends up dying, it wouldn't be surprising if the entire Albion family gets executed. So just to be safe, Lest decided to follow them at all costs, and it seems like his gut feeling was spot on. In the present, Lest immediately steps on to protect Princess Charlotte when the monster is about to end her. Although it was such a close call since Lest even nearly got himself executed, he's still relieved that he was able to make it on time, or else the princess might be badly injured by now. With Lest's unfamiliar face suddenly showing up, Charlotte immediately asks him who he is. At that moment, Lest eventually remembered that he needed to introduce himself to Charlotte, even though he really didn't want to meet up with her yet. But because his brainless brothers are so unreliable, he ends up getting caught in such a situation. However, despite all this, Lest still wanted to keep his identity hidden. So instead of saying his name, he just went on to state that he's just an ordinary passerby. But Charlotte can't seem to easily believe that since there's no way an ordinary person would want to have a stroll in this kind of place. With the princess having so many questions to ask, Lest tells her that they can just talk about it later, as he still needs to take care of the beast. Charlotte immediately understands that and lets Lest do his job. This Gale Wolf Lest is up against is actually a C-rank monster that can freely manipulate wind magic, making it a troublesome opponent. Even with his current strength, Lest knows that if he fights it head-on, his chances of winning are only at 50% or more like 40 at best. But he's just trying to stay optimistic, thinking that with the knowledge he gained from the game, he'll be able to win this fight somehow. As the monster is about to attack them, Lest is able to dodge it and immediately goes on to defend the princess at all costs. However, he seems to struggle so much since this monster has varied attacks and no openings. So whether up close or at a distance, Lest is having a hard time executing his counterattacks. This is already expected considering Gale Wolves are known to be extremely dangerous, with their perfectly balanced mix of offense and defense. However, this might be the case for a normal citizen in the game, but Lest is different. As an avid player of the game, he's technically mastered this monster's attack pattern. Because of this, he was able to land a hit on it, shocking Charlotte, who was witnessing the fight on the side. Now this made the princess wonder who this man might be. Even though this monster's physical ability and sword skills aren't much different from hers, Lest keeps landing blow after blow to the Gale Wolf that even Charlotte couldn't touch. In the midst of all this, Charlotte remembered her intense training with Elna. Ever since Charlotte got the title of Holy Sword Princess, she has worked harder ever since. Ever since the beginning, she was already aware of the fact that when it comes to pure sword skills and magic, there are people with even more exceptional skills than she has. So despite the title she received, Charlotte didn't want to slack off and lose to those people. Seeing how motivated Charlotte is made Elna happy, but as a mentor, she also reminded the princess that not all rivals are necessarily high skill holders. It was at this moment that Elna mentioned Lest. Elna tried to both warn and inform the princess that there are people out there, like Lest, who wasn't blessed with incredible skills, but through exceptional talent and hard work, they were able to gain power that rivals Charlotte's skill. During this time, Elna finally reveals to Charlotte that there's a boy from the Albion family who's the same age as she is, which is quite interesting. Seeing how happy Elna spoke about this boy, Charlotte was speechless for a minute. Although she really didn't intend to visit the Albion household, when Elna suggested that she should go meet this guy if she's interested to motivate her to train more, Charlotte became fascinated herself. Going back to the present, now that she's witnessing how Lest fights such a powerful monster, Charlotte immediately knows that this is the guy Elna is talking about. At that very moment, Charlotte is certain that this man is none other than Lest, the useless skill holder everyone is talking about. Despite being blessed with a skill tame, he's a genius who possesses a power that defies all standards. So even if it's quite unbelievable, Charlotte is certain that this man is the one Elna is talking about all along. While Charlotte is so mesmerized by Lest's skill, Lest is quite focused on ensuring that this monster loses, especially now that it's already out of magic power. Lest sees this as his chance to finish it once and for all. So as soon as the monster changed its course and tries to attack Charlotte instead, using his sword, Lest smashed the monster's head and immediately killed it using his technique called One Flash. Although this might be quite a hard fight for others, Lest made it look so easy that even Charlotte, one of the strongest skill holders in the kingdom, was speechless with what he had just done. However, instead of celebrating, Lest feels like it's too early for him to do so because for tamers like him, this is where the real challenge begins. Now that the Gale Wolf is finally down, Charlotte went ahead and thanked Lest for saving her. Hearing the princess say his name shocked Lest, as he never expected she would know his name. However, when the princess is asked how she knows his name, she doesn't answer it directly. Instead, she goes on to tell Lest that she has the same wooden sword as the one he's holding now, which is something that Elna gave to them individually. So to make things more formal, Charlotte introduces herself as the princess of the Finale Kingdom, and informs Lest that she is also trained under the same swordmaster as he is. For a princess, Charlotte didn't even hesitate to bow for Lest while expressing her deepest gratitude to him for protecting her till the very end. She also revealed that Lest's bravery and swordsmanship also moved her. Although Lest tried to make things casual, as if what he did was not extraordinary, the princess kept on thanking him for what he did. Charlotte's wide smile somehow made Lest flustered, so before she noticed that he was now blushing, Lest excused himself and told the princess that he was going to check in on the Gale Wolf for a bit. While he's at it, Lest also asks the princess if she can look after his brothers for now, which Charlotte immediately does. Now that the princess is out of the way, Lest checks the wolf up close, and it's definitely 20 times bigger than him. Since things have gone well so far, all that's left for Lest to do is see if this monster is willing to serve him. As he checks on his panel, he's quite surprised to read that the Gale Wolf has actually taken an interest in him and has even acknowledged his strength and is now willing to serve. So when Lest was asked if he would tame this guy or not, he didn't even think twice and pressed yes. Excited at the fact that the very first monster he had ever tamed, Lest went on to lightly brush its fur. Then, moments later, the system finally informs him that the taming process has been successful, and a portion of the tamed target's power is now granted to him. So technically, Lest has now acquired a wind magic skill. On top of that, he has now also unlocked Interdimensional Sanctuary as a reward for his first successful tame. As Lest finally feels the magic power flowing into him, he is now more excited than ever. At that moment, Lest finally realized why the Lest in the game really believed that he could become the strongest. As it turned out, Lest's tame doesn't just let him control monsters, but he can also gain the power of the monsters he controls. So this simply means Lest will be able to gain the enhanced physical abilities of the monsters he fought. But if a monster possesses a unique skill, he is also able to use it as well. In his case today, he's gained the wind magic that this monster uses. In the game, Lest succumbed to this power and met a tragic end, losing everything. But he is now different. In order to overcome his weaknesses, he underwent intense training, sought Elna's advice, and improved his swordsmanship. Now that he has no intention of letting all this effort go to waste, that is why he aims to tame more monsters. Because the more he tames, the stronger he becomes. After all, as long as Lest keeps this up, he'll become the strongest in the world in no time. Now that this Gale Wolf is now officially his monster, Lest decides to give it a name. To keep things simple for him, he just used Gale as the formal nickname of his new pet. On top of that, since having such a creature as a pet is not normal, Lest decides to keep Gale's existence a secret at best. So to put his new skill to the test, Lest used Interdimensional Sanctuary to hide Gale in the meantime. Then moments later, Estella enters the scene, rushing towards the princess worried for her well-being. The princess who was attending the twins smiled at her and told her that another Gale Wolf appeared, but they somehow managed to repel it. Hearing this shocked Stella, so she immediately asked the princess if she fought it herself or did the boys protect her. Charlotte was proud to reveal that the one who defended her was Lest, which shocked Stella even more. Stella is having a hard time believing this since Lest is known to be a useless skill holder, but Charlotte assures her that she saw everything with her own eyes, so there's no doubt about it. Since Charlotte already revealed it, Lest had no choice but to tell the truth that it was indeed him. He then expressed how it was a tough battle, but thankfully in the end, he somehow managed to repel it. After hearing this, Stella immediately expressed her gratitude towards Lest and even liked to offer her thanks properly once everything had settled down. At this point, Lest has come to realize that he really needs to be more careful when meeting characters from the game, since if not, he might end up in trouble. But for now, Lest guides the two girls and brings his brothers out of the forest, before more trouble comes approaching them again. When they finally made it back to the mansion, almost every maid and servant in their households was worried for them. Everyone was wondering where the boys and the princess went when they suddenly vanished from the training ground. But before telling them, Lest was quick to order everyone to treat Her Highness's injuries first. So immediately, everyone went ahead and bought meds, towels, and some water to tend to the princess. Meanwhile, when the Marquis saw that Lest was the only one who was unharmed, he immediately started accusing him, asking Lest if he did something to the four. However, the princess was quick to defend him to his father, telling the Marquis that Lest didn't do anything. In fact, he was the one who saved her life. Hearing this shocked the Marquis, as he never expected his least favorite child to be able to do such a thing. For the Marquis to better understand the situation, Stella went on to explain to him everything. She started off stating that she and Charlotte were being guided by the twins into the Arst Forest, which the boys claimed to explore regularly. However, while they were there, they ended up encountering two C-rank Gale Wolves, which led to this unfortunate situation. Upon hearing that his beloved sons brought the princess to the Arst Forest, the Marquis was in deep disbelief. So as a precautionary measure, Stella went on to ask the Marquis if he really allowed his children to enter the forest where dangerous monsters like that appear. The Marquis immediately denies this, stating that he never allows such a thing, even adding that his sons must have gone without permission. If this is true, given that the young lady was exposed to danger, Stella made it clear to the Marquis that the responsibility lies with him, the head of the household. Upon hearing this, the Marquis immediately got nervous that he might end up getting punished by the king for what his sons had done. But knowing that this would just cause much trouble, Charlotte decided not to make things difficult anymore. The princess was also quite aware of the fact that they were also at fault for blindly believing what the siblings told them. Therefore, she has no intention of placing all the blame on the Marquis alone. But more importantly, since Les drove off the Gale Wolf all by himself and saved her life, Charlotte decided to overlook this incident in light of his actions. After hearing the full story, the Marquis couldn't even believe that Les managed to take down the Gale Wolf by himself. While his father is confused and quite frustrated at what happened, Les tries to avoid eye contact with him at all costs. Since they had been through so much today, Charlotte went on to ask the Marquis to show them the way to their rooms so that they could rest already. Before going, Charlotte talks to Les one more time, telling him that she'd like to properly thank him again later. As the princess goes to her room, the Marquis is left to wonder how his worthless son actually managed to defeat the Gale Wolf. He can't seem to believe that it was even possible in the first place. In the end, Charlotte and her companion ended up staying at the mansion too. During that same night, Les is having a hard time sleeping, remembering what happened a while ago. Considering he can't sleep anymore, Les decided to go do some late night training instead. However, on his way out, he unexpectedly came across Charlotte, looking so beautiful in her white nightgown. Upon seeing Les, Charlotte can't even hide her excitement. Not that they're all alone by themselves, Charlotte grabs this opportunity to have a chat with Les alone. Once again, she went on to thank him for what he did, since if he hadn't rushed over, she might have lost her life. Les then immediately tells her to raise her head, as it is quite disrespectful to let a princess bow before you. He then goes on to tell her that he's glad she's safe, giving Charlotte the impression that Les is indeed a kind person. Charlotte also grabbed this opportunity to express her amazement regarding how Les managed to drive off that Gale Wolf all by himself. His swordsmanship was truly impressive, and Charlotte ended up concluding that Les gained such remarkable strength precisely because of who he was. The two then started complimenting each other to the point that they both started getting flustered because of it. But kidding aside, Charlotte became so open with Les that she even mentioned that this experience made her realize she still has so much more to learn. After that experience, she has now made up her mind and Charlie asks Les something. Seeing the princess blush somehow made Les nervous. As his heart starts pounding, the princess just looks at him and smiles for a while before asking him to become her sworn friend. Confused at first, Charlotte then explains that she wants a friend who shares the same ideals and practices swordsmanship as Les. The young boy had quite an awkward reaction regarding it. To make things more confusing, Charlotte even added that she wanted to technically make Les her rival, who competes and strives to become the best with her. Her rather excited demeanor suddenly changed when she remembered how stagnant she was with her training. Until now, her only goal was beating Lady Elna, but Elna is just too strong for her. So even if she tries to chase her, Charlotte has always had a hard time as she can't see her back at all, as Elna moves ahead. But with Les, who is the same age as she is, always one step ahead of her, Charlotte feels like she could have the chance to train and compete with someone like him. She's certain that she would become stronger. That is why, with Les as her comrade, Charlotte is certain that she'll be able to grow. Les somehow found himself torn with doubt, quite uncertain whether he should accept the princess's request or not. For the longest time now, ever since he remembered his memories from his past life, Les made a decision not to get deeply involved with the main characters of the game. However, no matter what he tries, fate has other plans for him. So in the end, he can't help but give in to the princess, as she really kept insisting on him to agree. Aside from that, Les really doesn't have any choice, since who is he to reject a princess's request anyway? As soon as Les said yes to Charlotte, this confirmation really made the princess happy as she really wanted to be friends with him. On the other hand, Les himself is also looking forward to working together with her, since this was something he himself wasn't expecting to happen. With that being said, since they are now officially sword partners, the princess really had an absurd idea to let Les just address her casually by calling her by her nickname Char. Upon hearing this, Les was shocked as he felt like this was a little bit too much, considering the difference between their status. Charlotte is quick to scold Les, telling him that she doesn't care what anyone else thinks, so as long as she says it's fine, then it simply means it's fine. Now that Les thinks of it, Charlotte was quite the stubborn one who never backed down once she decided something back in the game. With that said, Les had no choice but to give the princess what she wanted and drop off the formal speech. And just like that, the person Les was trying to avoid all this time has eventually become his unexpected friend. Now the question is, will this be something that Les can also benefit from, or will this just give him much more trouble in the end? The next day, it's finally time for Charlotte to head back to the palace. However, before leaving, she made sure to properly bid everyone farewell. As soon as the princess sets off on her journey back to the royal capital, the Marquis is quite frustrated at the fact that, of all people, Les was the one who got the princess's interest. And on top of all that, the Marquis also scolded his twin for almost causing the Albion family a bunch of trouble. The Marquis's wife then defended her sons, telling her husband that although the two of them indeed put Princess Charlotte in danger, they only did it because they were following his order of gaining the princess's favor. But the Marquis can't seem to comprehend and accept that fact. Also, because of his twin sons, the princess has become interested in their foolish son, Les. Hearing all of this made Lest feel sort of uncomfortable and quite irritated, since never in his life did he imagine that his family would make a big deal out of this. Meanwhile, the twins then explained themselves to their father, stating that in the first place, the reason Her Highness became interested in Lest was based on lies. The two can't seem to believe that Lest is able to defeat a Gale Wolf on his own. But since the princess already said she saw it with her own eyes, the Marquis can't have doubts now. However, to make everything about them, the twins go on to state that Lest was able to do all of those because they had already weakened the wolf before they passed out, seemingly trying to make it look like Lest merely landed the final blow. They then added that Lest was just taking advantage of the confusion and tricked the princess, which they termed as absolutely unforgivable. Since the Marquis himself is still quite in denial of all this, although the twins' explanation is not logical at all, he made himself believe that this was the truth, causing Lest to look at them with such dismay and frustration. At the back of Lest's mind, although Edward and the others had indeed attacked the Gale Wolf, but their blows had no weight and didn't do any damage at all. Certain that it was because of him that the wolf got defeated, Lest will not allow his brothers to take credit for what he did this time around. However, the Marquis didn't even try to listen to Lest and even told him to stop spouting nonsense. But this time around, Lest doesn't want to get stomped over by his own family anymore. His dedication in really making everyone believe he was the one who defeated the Gale Wolf shocked his father, as he had never seen Lest so serious before. So to see if Lest's really as strong as he claims himself to be, the Marquis orders him to duel both Ed and Sid at the same time and achieve victory to prove that he was the one responsible for defeating the Gale Wolf the other day. Considering Ed and Sid couldn't handle the wolf themselves, if Lest is telling the truth, defeating the two would be an easy task for him. Upon hearing this, the twins couldn't even contain their excitement anymore, quite confident that they'll be able to defeat their brother in no time. Although a 2-on-1 duel may go against chivalry, the twins are sure that even the goddess would allow it if it were to so-called expose their foolish brother's lies. At this point, if Edward and Sidward can use their true strength without fear, they are not weak enough to be overwhelmed by Gale Wolf. So individually, they're almost on par with him. But against both at once, Lest knows that he wouldn't stand a chance. However, that was the story until yesterday. But now that he was able to tame the Gale Wolf and unlock this new power, that logic doesn't apply anymore. So with much confidence, Lest knows that he'll be able to defeat his brothers in no time, and this overflowing confidence of his shocked his family. But before they started their duel, an unexpected guest arrived. Elna, out of all people, offered to become the witness to the brothers' duel. Even the Marquis was shocked, as he didn't expect to see Lady Elna here now, since there should still be time before the next training session. Elna immediately explained that she had heard through a message from Stella that her students were attacked by the Gale Wolf, and was happy when she heard that they were able to repel them. Since Elna couldn't just sit still, she decided to come here right away and check on her students. But when she came, Elna happened to overhear that the 3 students she was teaching were about to duel. Since she's already here, Elna decided to serve as the official witness for their fight. Upon hearing Elna say 3 of her students, the Marquis finally realized that she was also teaching Lest on top of teaching Ed and Sid. Elna quickly explains herself with ease, telling the Marquis that she only came to such a decision due to Lest's firm request. Because of that, she has been supervising Lest's training ever since. As soon as Elna revealed this, the twins and the Marquis couldn't even hide their shock at what they had just heard. With such a serious expression, Elna tells the 3 that her decision was purely personal, and the time she spent training him is nothing compared to the twins. And above all, even considering all that, she personally doesn't think Lest can win against Ed and Sid, so she wonders where Lest's confidence comes from. As his teacher, she also wanted to confirm it herself. Hearing this gave the Marquis some glimpse of hope that Lest is not as talented as the princess may have thought, but Lest knows to himself that Elna has been watching how he has grown all this time. This is why he is certain that she knows he is not the type of person to flaunt baseless confidence or power. Knowing that his mentor is merely testing him, Lest made a decision to ensure that he would not only prove himself to his family, but also to his master Elna. With that said, as the duel was about to start, Lest went on to go to his position, and upon seeing his wooden sword, the boys immediately knew that he was telling the truth regarding being Elna's disciple. However, while Lest's sword is only wood, the twins' weapons were specifically made for real combat. Now this made Lest feel a bit nervous, but at the same time, curious as to what his siblings were actually thinking right now. As it turned out, the reason Lest is so confident that he can beat both of his brothers is because of the new power he gained through taming. Now that he has gained enhanced physical abilities and wind magic, Lest had a little confidence that he'll be able to pull this off. But still, he has no intention of using wind magic here. Aside from that, he also would rather not reveal the true power of Tame just yet, as it will only cause him much trouble. Besides, his trump card isn't limited to wind magic at all, knowing that there's still a lot of power he can gain sooner or later. Moments later, the duel finally begins, and the twins initiate the first attack. They were confident that they'll be able to knock down Lest in no time. Although there is no doubt that they are fast and quite strong, however, Lest's agility is just as improved as they are. Witnessing their brother like this for the first time really shocked the twins, as they never really anticipated that Lest would be able to block all of their attacks. So they tried to really work together, and when one of the twins managed to find an opening, they immediately tried to finish the fight with one blow. Thinking that Lest would not be able to block a steel greatsword with a mere wooden one, Ed aims to smash Lest's sword to pieces. But instead of worrying, Lest finds this is the perfect time to use his trump card, Magic Infusion. Because of this magic, he was able to block Ed's attack. Shocked by how his brother managed to do so, Ed immediately asked Lest what he did. Lest didn't even hesitate and told him the truth, informing Ed that the technique he used was an advanced form of mana control called Magic Infusion. By infusing magic into the tiniest gaps within an object, this technique can drastically enhance its strength. But for someone like Ed who knows nothing other than blindly swinging a sword, this technique might be beyond his understanding. And hearing Lest say such a thing really angered Ed. For more context, Magic Infusion was also in the game Lest played in his past life. It's generally a powerful and versatile skill used by frontline classes. Mastering it requires a large amount of magic power and delicate magic control. By diligently training his magic every single day until now, Lest has managed to acquire a solid grasp of the magic control technique. On top of that, thanks to the boost in magic power he got from taming the Gale Wolf, Lest can now finally unleash it in a real battle. Aside from that, thanks to the taming, Lest also gained another skill. By circulating magic throughout his entire body, he can further enhance his physical abilities. Because of this, he can now activate both the body enhancement and magic infusion skills at the same time. In both weapon performance and physical strength, Lest already has an upper hand, and his twin brothers couldn't even believe that the sibling they looked down on for years is now stronger and much better than they are. Since they have been attacking him constantly for minutes now, quite exhausted, the twin doesn't even know what to do next, considering that no matter what they try, nothing seems to work on beating Lest. Now that they have already had their fair share of time to initiate their attacks, it's now Lest's turn to show them what he truly has. Without hesitation, Lest goes ahead and attacks his brothers with confidence. Smiling as he made every strike, his brothers were astounded to witness his true greatness. When they thought they'd be able to get a chance to counterattack, Lest managed to dodge it, saying it was too obvious. Considering the brothers' stance is wide open, Lest didn't even have a hard time landing a hit on them. As the fight continues, the Marquis who is witnessing the fight is speechless. At this point, he starts to wonder why Lest, who only has Tame, is capable of moving like this. Even their mother is in deep shock, can't seem to believe that this was even true. Meanwhile, Elna just looks closely at their fight, closely observing the kid's movements and improvements. She was quick to notice that Lest's rate of growth until now was already extraordinary, but his improvement over this past month defies all common sense. There's something within Lest, something that even Elna cannot perceive. But Elna also cannot deny that Edward and the others also have trump cards they haven't shown yet. The overwhelming power known as skills is capable of overturning a commoner's efforts in an instant. So if one cannot overcome that, Lest cannot advance beyond this point. During this fight, Lest only has two options to win this duel. It is either to knock the opponent unconscious or make them surrender. But he knows well that the former is simpler, but even if he wins with a single knockout blow, they might just complain later with flimsy excuses, like with the Gale Wolf. In that case, Lest has no choice but to thoroughly demonstrate which of them is truly superior. Now that the fight is intensified, Lest managed to feel the change in the atmosphere. His brothers are now more agitated than before, telling him not to underestimate them. They then kept making excuses, telling their brother that they are just holding back until now, and that once they use their trump cards, Lest will be finished in an instant. Moments later, the twins went on to showcase their individual skills, namely Rockfall and High Speed Dance. However, Lest was already expecting this to happen. Just like him, his brothers also have specialized skills tailored to their respective weapons. Although Lest has Flash Strike as a countermeasure, it's ultimately just a basic skill and wouldn't really do that much. Aside from that, in terms of both power and speed, it fails in comparison to his brother's specialized skills. At this rate, Lest is already aware of the fact that he'll be overpowered and overwhelmed by his brothers with nothing left to do, which clearly shows the decisive difference between those with combat-focused skills and those without. Although he didn't really plan on using his other trump card yet, but without a choice, he ended up deciding to use a specialized skill now. With much focus, he went on to activate his wind magic skill by enveloping the blade in wind vibrating at ultra high speeds. This skill replicates the ultimate cutting edge, and it's called Matoi Kazutashi. With this skill, Lest was able to cut down his twin's brother's blade without effort, shocking his father and mother. At this point, the twin stumbles over, quite frightened at Lest's amazing skill. And just like that, by Edward and Sidward surrendering, Elna confirms that the winner of this duel is none other than Lest. The twins' mother couldn't even bring herself to believe that a concubine's child like Lest defeated her sons. Meanwhile, the Marquis walked out, quite frustrated at what had just happened. The twins immediately run after him, seemingly trying to explain what happened. As soon as everyone left, Elna immediately went to commend Lest for what he did. Not that she doubted his claim of defeating the Gale Wolf, but frankly, this result really surprised her. Upon hearing this, Lest expresses that he is just glad he didn't display an unsightly battle unworthy of Elna's student. But considering those twins are also Elna's students, she just went ahead and laughed at Lest's comment. Despite that, she's still hoping that this incident will encourage them to train harder. Regardless of the result, Elna couldn't be prouder of Lest. Now that the duel is over, Elna also expressed that she has several questions regarding Lest's techniques, which ultimately made Lest feel nervous. However, she decided not to interrogate him about everything, but she still wants to ask him one thing. At the moment Ed and the others were about to unleash their techniques, Elna noticed that Lest hesitated for an instant, so she wonders if perhaps Lest was considering a countermeasure other than destroying their weapons. Now that Elna has mentioned it, it's true that Lest could have subdued them without using Natoi Kazutachi, but completely blocking their powerful skills would have also been difficult for him to do. However, Lest is certain that he could have at least deflected the trajectory of their initial strokes with his wooden sword. Although it would have meant inducing friendly fire, this method had several problems. One, since it relies on using the opponent's strength against them, Lest already expected that his brothers might refuse to acknowledge his power. Another is that they could have also been seriously injured. Although unavoidable in a duel, Lest wanted to avoid the hassle of them complaining later because he had injured them. So for those reasons, Lest chose to destroy their weapons using Matoi Kazutachi, and it seems like Elna managed to see right through that too. In any case, Lest has secured a certain standing within the Albion household. Knowing that he couldn't have done it without the Gale Wolf's power, he decided to give his new pet a word of thanks. Using his power, he went on to open a portal into his interdimensional world and called out for Gale. The tamed monster wanted to get out of the portal, but since that would cause much trouble, Lest decided to come over to his world instead. As soon as he stepped inside, he immediately went ahead and thanked Gale for his wind magic, which is the reason why he was able to beat the two. Although willing the duel is good, Lest still knows that he needs to think about the future too. Then, all of a sudden, a panel pops out of nowhere, informing Lest that his tame slot limit has been reached, so to perform the next taming, the limit must be increased. However, this is all of a sudden. Lest already expected this. While tame is extremely powerful, the number of tame slots is limited. To subjugate monsters other than Gale, Lest needs to raise his skill level no matter what. Based on what he remembers in the game, he would only ever subjugate about 5 monsters in total. Each one was powerful and Lest himself gained considerable strength. But because he neglected his training, he became weak instantly if his monsters were defeated first. So to make sure that it doesn't happen to him here, Lest plans to raise his level no matter what. Although late night training can improve his stats, but for more efficient growth, he has no choice but to defeat monsters and gain experience points. By taming Gale, Lest finally possessed strength close to B rank, despite him being C rank. At this point, he should be able to handle reasonable unexpected situations on his own. However, he still wants to go fight monsters in the Arst Forest, since given how things are, there's no way his family would let him into the forest anymore. But for his next tame, he already has a monster in mind, and deep within the Arst Forest lives that monster. So the next day, in a surprising turn of events, his problems were finally solved. Meanwhile, the Marquis is now starting to wonder to himself how things have turned out. 3 months ago at the Divine Oracle ceremony, the skill his son Lest was granted was tame. For the Albion family, which had produced generations of the strongest class of swordsmen, it was a useless garbage tier dud skill utterly useless in combat. So it was natural for the Marquis to see this as nothing less than a disgrace. Therefore, immediately after the Divine Oracle ceremony, he issued a notice to all relevant parties, telling them that Lest is removed as a candidate for the next head of the house. But demonstrating a willingness to cut off even his own flesh and blood without mercy, the Marquis sought to flaunt his strength, like that of a lion. But Lest grew into a warrior capable of defeating even a Gale Wolf, and ended up catching the eye of the second princess. At this point, the Marquis is feeling frustrated with his own decisions. Since Lest's reputation has risen now, his decision to remove him as a candidate could be seen as a mistake. That, above all else, must be avoided. However, the Marquis kept on making himself believe that he had made no mistake, since someone who merely wields a skill of tame could never lead the proud Albion family. That is why, to ensure that he doesn't get embarrassed in front of everyone, the Marquis plans on proving that Lest is unfit to be the next head, no matter what. He's so invested in it, he even thought of eliminating his place within the Albion family in both name and reality. Aside from that, it was also revealed that this house has an eldest son who attends the academy and was chosen for the same high-grade skill of sword same. The Marquis is certain that as long as his eldest son shows everyone he is powerful, the future of the Albion family is in good hands. Although the Marquis is already planning to expel Lest, but since he has the princess's favor, doing so will be a hard thing to do for him. But as cruel as it may be, the Marquis ended up deciding to send Lest to the Arst Forest again in hopes that the monsters there would take care of his son already. But little did the Marquis know that for someone like Lest, who wants to level up quickly, this is the best possible offer he could hear. But he is still wondering why his father would give him such an order, letting him go alone to investigate in such a dangerous forest. Although the Marquis tried to make up some logical explanations as to why he's doing this, Lest doesn't seem to believe him and knows that his father has some underlying intentions. However, right now, his father's true intentions don't matter anymore. Considering this is such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Lest immediately takes the offer and goes into the forest to increase his level as soon as possible. In the game, Arst was divided into 3 sections: the shallow layer, the middle layer, and the deep layer. The area entrusted to him this time is only the easiest part, which is the shallow layer. He immediately knew that his father may have figured out that making him investigate the middle or deep layer right away would seem unnatural. Monsters appearing in the shallow layer are generally weak, mostly E rank, lower to D rank middle. However, Les doesn't even mind fighting off as many monsters as he can, considering he has Gale by his side. Aside from that, one of the unconventional effects granted by his skill Tame is that it enhances the ability of not just the tamer, but also the tamed monster. Moreover, the enhancement multiplier increases the higher his strength becomes, and because of this, Les was able to seamlessly fight off every monster that came running his way, until a Firebird, a D-rank upper monster, appeared out of nowhere. Since his wooden sword can't reach it, Les finds this as the perfect time to practice his wind magic. Fortunately, just like how he is with his wooden sword, he managed to defeat the Firebird in no time. As he starts to level up, a pleasant sensation starts to rush throughout his body, almost like his body became lighter, something that he didn't feel when he fought Gale the other day. Incidentally, the experience of monsters defeated by Gale naturally comes to Les as well. Thanks to that, his level continued to rise steadily without stopping, but simultaneously, he also proceeded with training his wind magic, which is difficult to practice at the mansion. And so, at an astonishing speed, Les continued to grow stronger. A week had passed since the start of the investigation of the Forest of Arst. At times, powerful stray creatures like Gale would appear, but day after day, Les and Gale managed to defeat the monsters together, to the point that they are no match for them anymore. So if Les wants to level up further, he'll probably have to challenge the middle layers and beyond. However, since he hasn't gotten permission from his dad yet, he starts contemplating whether he should just sneak off and go anyway without telling his father. But to his surprise, as soon as he got home that day, his father went on to tell him that starting tomorrow, he'll be surveying deeper areas already. This shocked Les as he never really expected his father to say such a thing. At the back of his mind, his father may have already gotten impatient seeing him easily handling the shallow layers. Once again, Les is thankful that his father gave him an order at the perfect timing. But just to be sure, he asks his father if he is really allowing him to go into the middle layers where monsters appear much stronger. The Marquis didn't even hesitate to say yes, and even told Les that he is doing this because he supposedly has high expectations for him. Little did the Marquis know that he was literally giving his least favorite son a favor. As soon as the sun rose up the next day, Les and Gale were excited to start their training once again, now in the middle layers of the forest. In the shallow layers, most monsters ranging from lower E rank to mid D rank are seen, but in the middle layers, even high C rank monsters could also appear. Still, even opponents like that weren't enough for them. Before Les knew it, he had apparently reached B rank level strength thanks to the stronger monsters he was able to fight for the past few days. And so, steadily leveling up, another week has passed. Then, without any warning, a monster they weren't expecting suddenly appears. It is a mid B rank monster, and it was a real pain even in the game. Since Les really wanted to finish this monster off in no time, Les goes on to call for Gale to help him. And with their powers mashed up together, especially with Les using his Wind Sever armor magic, they were able to land a hit on the monster. However, just like in the game, the Cyclops is about to use his I-Beam skill, which is a high-power special attack skill. But since Les knows its timing, he knows well that he can dodge it in no time. However, instead of doing that, Les deliberately faces it head-on and plans on intercepting it at all costs. He's only been able to test this against weaklings before, but with this Cyclops in front of him, Les is excited to test his skills now. And just like that, Les managed to take down this massive creature with just one hit. Because the required value has been reached, Les' level increases again, which means he can finally tame another monster. Les was pretty excited to use this card again since he can finally tame a second monster. For days now, he has already decided which monster to tame next, and it is residing in the deep layers of the Arst Forest. Les hasn't received permission from his father to enter yet, but he can't help but wonder if he really needs to. Although he badly wanted to increase his skills again since they already had quite a long day, Les decided to head back to the mansion for now. Since he is certain that tomorrow, he and Gale will be fighting without a doubt the strongest opponent they've faced so far. And this is the legendary creature passed down in this country. The monster Les will attempt to tame tomorrow is none other than the dragon. Then the next day, though Les wasn't officially cleared by his father to explore the deep parts of the forest, he decided to head to their destination anyway. Now that they had finally broken through the upper and middle layers, for an hour, they battled their way through B-rank monsters to dive deeper into the forest. Eventually, after hours of fighting, they finally reached the heart of their journey. As they finally reach an open field, Les looks excited as they wait for their opponent to finally come. Then all of a sudden, a strong gust of wind alerted them, and moments later, the black dragon suddenly appeared, flying out of an abandoned church. As his roar echoes through the field, instead of feeling nervous, Les looks rather excited to finally have the chance to fight off such a massive creature. And to think that this dragon is still young yet already exuding such an overwhelming aura really amazes Les to the core. In the game, it's only a tenth of its peak size, but when fully grown, it surpasses 100 meters, and it might even explode. In the story, it was controlled by a demon general and went berserk, leaving the capital half destroyed. Heroes were defeated by their strength, so Lest thought the entire nation could be wiped out. But the dragon managed to break free from the demon's grasp and help the people afterward. With its last breath, it healed the people and the towns it had hurt. When he was already breathing his dying breath, the black dragon suddenly spoke, shocking everyone. It was then revealed that the black dragon's distant ancestors once served as divine protectors of the realm. They are legendary dragons who shielded the towns from countless demons and creatures. That is why, above all, the black dragon wanted to avoid destroying people or nations with its own power. Eventually, the black dragon finished its tale and slipped into eternal slumber with a quiet dignity. Since this was an inevitable loss event after all, though it wasn't the most popular scene among players, it strangely lingered in Lest's mind. Despite this dragon only appearing once in the game, Lest had felt a strong connection with it back then. Then when he realized he was reborn as Lest, the first thought that came to him was that he would use his taming power to command this dragon no matter what. After all, this dragon will surely be a powerful ally if tamed, and Lest doesn't want to end in tragedy like in the original story. So, 4 months since he swore to tame this thing, the moment has finally come. But to tame it, he must first defeat it with all his strength, or else he would be the one dead by the end of the fight. In this world, dragons possess immense magical power, as they're termed the king of magic that transforms all realities. It grows rapidly by absorbing magic, reaching Super S rank when fed by demon generals. But as a hatchling, it should only be top B rank. So with Gale and his strength combined, Lest is certain that victory isn't out of their reach at all. With this, the fight eventually starts with the dragon finally making its move. Although a little nervous, Lest and Gale also want to make sure that they show this creature their real power as well. Without hesitation, Lest and Gale went ahead and charged in as well. Using the technique Cyclone Blast, Lest hopes that they'll be able to catch the monster off guard, even a little bit. However, to their surprise, with just one flap, the monster managed to counter it. But Lest tried to think optimistically at all times, and even went ahead and charged in once more. While they're trying their best to make sure that everything goes well, the dragon goes on to slowly aim to cast its pure massive destruction magic. Although this is such a deadly power, Lest wasn't even scared of it at all. As an avid player of the game, he knows that as long as he dodges it, this power means nothing at all. So when Lest managed to find an opening using his wind magic, he tried to initiate an aerial combat. Using his physical enhancement plus H magic, Lest managed to land a hit on the legendary monster. As it roared in pain, Lest tells Gale to attack it again to make sure it's down. However, even Gale's claws couldn't break through the dragon's skin. So as soon as the black dragon got back on its feet again, Lest prepared himself again as the real fight was about to begin. Over the next few minutes, Gale and Lest tried their best to beat this monster. The mighty black dragon, once shot down from the sky, seems to have given up on soaring through the heavens once more. In exchange, the black dragon poured its entire might into the ground battle. So Lest knows well that if he lets his guard down even for a heartbeat, defeat won't hesitate to seize him in its ruthless grip. Yet in the midst of battle, there was this strange sense, a rush of exhilaration that Lest had never felt before. In the battle, all he could do was clash with this monster, as if it were a puppet of the demon horde. That is why Lest finds this is the perfect rare chance to fight with honor. So no matter how hard it may seem, Lest would do everything to ensure that he doesn't let this opportunity slip away. After all, the thrill of facing a formidable foe is electrifying for Lest, which is why his grip on the wooden sword tightens naturally. Without hesitation and any hint of fear, Lest wants to face this monster directly, since part of him craves more of this now more than ever. But more importantly, he wants to really succeed in taming this black dragon no matter what, as this is the only way he'd be able to save it from a sorrowful fate. So with much effort and dedication, Lest is looking forward to seizing that victory no matter what. Each attack from the black dragon is fierce, but it leaves itself open at all times. So dodging without a scratch wasn't that hard for Gale and Lest. However, Lest still feels like there's something off. Even as a youngling, this monster is a true king of magic indeed. As they continue to fight, Lest somehow manages to notice that this dragon is not aiming to hit them at all. It's almost as if it's letting them notice. As they stand still, the monster's now about to burst out. And although there have been numerous unavoidable powerful attacks up until now, if Lest's prediction is spot on, what the dragon is doing right now is simply a breath attack. This one is really something that these two need to avoid at all costs, since if they don't, they might end up getting killed in the end. At this point, Lest finally realized that taming's not just about overpowering a monster, but it's more than just defeating them. As the black dragon goes on to blow off its deadly breath, all that Lest could do was stand still as the deadly attack rushed towards him. The breath itself is scorching hot, but that's not even the worst part yet. For Lest, the scariest thing about this is the insane amount of magic the dragon has. Now that he's about to get vaporized by the monster, Lest then starts to wonder to himself if he really misjudged everything. But to his surprise, the monster's breath didn't even cause any damage to him at all. As it turned out, the black dragon never really meant to harm them ever since the beginning. The strange feeling that Lest got from all those attacks it seemed to miss wasn't wrong. The breath was the only concern, but it gave birth to a hypothesis. Lest thought he could withstand the breath attack, but as everyone could see, his hunch was spot on. At first, you would look at the dragon's actions as a serious breath attack, but it only masked the outside with the dense magic, leaving the inside hollow. Since it requires incredibly advanced magic control, a feat only the dragon, the king of magic, could achieve, The real question now is, what was the Black Dragon's true intention in the first place? The dragon not only demonstrates vast power and wisdom, but it also shares the ancient respect for protecting people and respecting one's dignity. With that said, although Les didn't really kill the dragon, the game now allows him to tame the dragon already. As it turned out, they were just being tested this whole time. For the Black Dragon, who holds the memory of ancestors protecting this land, it doesn't want its power used to harm innocent people. The dragon really had no intention of hurting an innocent person like Lest, and because Lest realized that and respected its pride, that is why the Black Dragon agreed to be tamed in the end. So without hesitation, since this is something that Lest really wants, he immediately proceeds with the plan, telling the dragon that he actually came here to protect its pride. Realizing that Lest is someone who will not hurt him, the dragon lowers its head, giving Lest permission to pet it. As soon as Lest placed his hands on the dragon's nose, the taming magic immediately started, and Lest is now about to make one of the most majestic creatures in this world a part of his power. While this is all happening, Lest can feel every part of him, even his senses, awakening. He himself couldn't even believe that such a strong power actually exists. After a while, the taming was finally complete, and Lest received a portion of the tamed creature's power, which is called the Dragon's Blessing. This power grants Lest strong resistance to status ailments and advanced magic control. Hearing this really made Lest happy, since in the game, the Black Dragon could convert magic into any phenomenon. So with this, he should be able to do the same now as well. Lest wanted to have the dragon's concept interference skills, but since the creature is still young, it just hasn't learned those skills yet. However, with enough growth, Lest will be granted more power for sure, and just imagining it is so thrilling for him. Since he can't really keep calling this creature Black Dragon forever, he decided to name it Noir, and it seems like the dragon really loved that name so much that he ended up roaring loudly. Now that they had managed to tame Noir, even Gale couldn't help but cry at their victory. With now two of the strongest monsters in this world in his hands, Lest is looking forward to doing great things with his new comrades. Now that they have already achieved their goal, Lest decided to finally head back home. Since he can't really take the dragon home in such a form, Lest decided to let him into his interdimensional residence to live with Gale as well. However, it seems like Noir didn't really want to leave the forest at all, which made Lest remember that the Arst Forest is actually teeming with powerful beasts, drawing evil magic. Demons often get summoned here, drawn to prey on magic. In the game, their strength and cruelty stood out, and they were deeply tied to Lest. This is where Noir steps in, since in the game, he was the one who purified this evil magic, stopping demons from being summoned. Noir's been guarding the people from the shadows all this time, and Lest totally understands why he can't simply go with them at all. Because of this, Lest decided to let Noir stay behind. However, he did ask Noir that in case he needed his strength, Lest is hoping Noir is there to lend it to him. Although Noir can't really speak the human language, his subtle nod assured Lest. At that moment, Lest managed to create a bond that links Master and Beast at all times. In a pinch, the bond alerts the other to danger, so when the time comes, Lest knows that they'll rush to each other's aid. Seeing Noir fly back to his base, Lest now had no motivation to work hard since once he tamed a few more, he could finally use Summon Beast like in the game. As they finally make their way home, Lest can't help but feel proud of himself and Gale for managing to tame Noir, since this really gave him a huge stat boost, on top of the Dragon's Blessing. But aside from that, since he also managed to actually get a shrink spell, Lest decided to try it out on Gale, and the result was pretty cute. With this size, Lest can now keep Gale at the mansion. However, as they were trying the spell, a monster suddenly rushed to attack Lest. At this point, Lest kept fighting monsters one after the other. However, this one is no ordinary monster at all, since based on how it looks, this monster is on par with Noir. The trickiest part that Lest finds with this monster is its insane physical resistance. For someone who fights with a wooden sword like him, fighting with such a monster is a worse matchup. Although he doesn't want to fight anymore, but with this monster's speed, there's no way he'll be able to escape. So without a choice, Lest needs to fight no matter what. Meanwhile, Gale also went ahead and helped his master using his own skills, and based on the looks of it, magic really bugs this monster. So while they're using intermediate magic, Lest tries his best to land a hit on this creature, as he's certain that he can deal damage with it. To Lest's surprise, magic comes together much more easily than usual, which is maybe caused by the Dragon's Blessing. With this, Lest is hoping that he'll be able to pull this trick off without a problem. Despite it still being new to him, Lest surprisingly did really well on his first try. With just one blow, he was able to kill the creature, completely creating a hole in its stomach. Gale, together with Lest himself, was shocked by the scene as this was something beyond his expectations. At this point, Lest finally realized that with the sword skills taught by Elna, the magic from taming Gale and Noir, and the combination of both, would surely pave his way to the top and make him the strongest warrior this world has ever seen. And the only thing he needs to do now is charge ahead and never look back.
The next day, Princess Charlotte went on to have a sudden visit to the Albion residence. As Gad went on to greet the princess and her aides, Lest stood still on the side together with his brothers. After having a brief chat with Lest's father, Princess Charlotte then went on to have a short glimpse at Lest, who is relatively nervous right now. The princess is currently here today for the sword training that the boys promised the other day. Lest didn't really expect her to come at all, but the fact that she is here just shows that she was indeed really looking forward to it. The princess tried to talk to Lest first, but since Edward and Sidward intervened, Charlotte has no other choice but to talk to them first. With a fake kind smile, the boys went on to apologize for what happened the other day. To make up for their actions, the twins invited the princess to join them for tea again, and after that, they also plan on having sword training with her. While the two were talking, Lest couldn't help but wonder why these boys are even here in the first place. He even starts to feel a little ashamed of his brothers for just not giving up at all. Despite the stupidity they did the other day, the twins still try to cozy up to the royal family as if nothing happened. However, it seems like Charlotte herself has already taken matters into her own hands. Instead of joining the twins, she straightforwardly told the boys that he had an appointment with Les today. Hearing this made the two so angry that they ended up giving Les that angry look. All that Lest could do right now is look away and just ignore the two to avoid creating another conflict. With that said, Lest then went on to show Lest the way so that they could start. As soon as they arrived at the Grand Training Hall, since Lest had called Charlotte earlier Princess, Charlotte started acting up, quite angry at Lest for not keeping his word. After they had that talk the other day, Charlotte was expecting Lest would start calling her by her nickname Sharo from now on. Knowing that Estella is listening to them right now, Lest felt a little nervous and embarrassed that Charlotte said that out loud. Looking at Lest's reaction, Estella immediately assured him that there was nothing to worry about since she had already heard about it from Charlotte the other day. Looking at Lest's reaction, Estella immediately assured him that there was nothing to worry about since she had already heard about it from Charlotte the other day. Estella also added that though she totally understands if Lest would have to keep formalities in public, but she still assured him that he doesn't have to hold back in front of her at all. Since the princess is so persistent about it, Lest just gave her what she wanted and agreed to call her Sharo from now on. Now that it's already settled, as they were about to start their training, Charlotte suddenly remembered something Lady Elna told her about Lest. When they met the other day, Elna informed Charlotte that Lest actually defeated Lord Edward and his friend in a duel, which was something that Charlotte expected from Lest. Little did she know, Lest is actually feeling a little awkward about discussing that topic, considering the turnout of that event was such a mess. But hearing how Charlotte speaks highly of him means that she doesn't know much about what really happened, especially the part where it was 2 versus 1, and Lest only had a wooden sword while they used real ones. Charlotte, not knowing any of this, warned Lest that she has been training hard these past 2 weeks too, and that she doesn't intend to lose to him so easily. Lest really admired her determination. Because of this, he is now also looking forward to their fight more than ever. Eventually, the fight finally started, and Lest couldn't deny the fact that Charlotte really has a pretty sharp attack, which he finds really amazing. Just 2 weeks ago, Charlotte seemed about on par with Edward and the others, but now she has already surpassed them in ways Lest couldn't imagine. Lest is certain that if she keeps improving at this rate, she could probably beat both Edward and Sidward at once. And the fact that it's only been about half a month since she awakened her skill, Lest is quite amazed by her progress. But he wasn't really that surprised since he already knew that this was the talent of the main heroine. After fighting for a good minute or two, Estella eventually stopped the fight after seeing how tired Charlotte already was. As Charlotte gasped for air, panting heavily, she went on to express how surprised she was that she couldn't even land a finger on Lest at all. All this time, she thought that she had gotten stronger by working hard to catch up to Lest, starting that day. But for some reason, she feels like the gap between them has only widened, and that he has drastically improved so much while she is stuck on the same level. For Lest to gain this much strength in such a short time, Charlotte now badly wanted to know what kind of training he had been doing since she really wanted him to teach her that. This shocked Lest a bit, since he wasn't really expecting her to act all energetic after losing. But then, Lest remembered that Charlotte's heart isn't so weak as to be discouraged by something like this. Considering Charlotte is a big part of the story, Lest is actually open to helping her. But the problem is, he can't possibly start talking about taming at all. Besides that, he has also been told by Gad not to mention the investigation of the Arst Forest to avoid triggering Charlotte's trauma. So, Lest now has to choose between exposing his stupid old man for ordering his son to investigate that forest despite what happened, or he could think of other ways to help Charlotte around. But he was to be honest with himself. He didn't really want to tell Charlotte that either. Running out of ideas on what he should do, Lest tried his best to think of something. Then suddenly, the thought of doing a midnight training came to mind. So he immediately went out to inform Charlotte about it. He first explained that he could only teach her the basics and nothing more. On top of that, he also went on to discuss with her what midnight training is. Midnight training is actually a 5-set training that Les does every night. In the game, it was a training that was done at midnight, but since Charlotte is only around for the day, Les decided to do the training in broad daylight. Midnight training is simply strength training that is full of sprints, mana refinement, running, and praying. By repeating these every day, a person will eventually raise all of their stats in the game. Since reincarnating as Lest hasn't skipped a single day of the training, which explains why he has gotten a lot stronger than he was before. Upon witnessing what type of vigorous training Lest has to go through, even Estella was speechless by it. At that moment, she finally understood why Lest was so strong, since, besides doing his usual sword practice every day, he had also been doing such intense training like this on the side. While Estella remained impressed on the side, Lest is actually starting to have some second thoughts on the intensity of training he let Charlotte start in. While Charlotte is busy with her training, Lest grabs the chance to thank Estella for acting as their referee earlier, since it really helped the fight. Estella immediately assured him that there was nothing to really be thankful for, since, as the princess's attendant, it was only natural for her to do that. On top of this, since Lest is already getting a lot more comfortable and closer with the princess, Estella also asked him to call her casually from now on, considering it would be a little weird for a noble like Lest to use honorifics to an attendant like Estella. Lest immediately does as Estella asked him to, but he still can't brush off the fact that he does feel a little awkward considering Estella is much older than him. Lest's training continued for another hour or so, until it was finally afternoon and the group had decided to rest. Since they finished earlier than they planned, Lest thought that they could have a tea party at the mansion in the meantime. However, after remembering how Edward and his crew would probably find some excuse to show up, Les decided not to push through with it, since it would just destroy their beautiful afternoon. So, in the end, Les eventually decided to just show the princess and Estella around the castle town. Upon hearing this, Charlotte couldn't contain her excitement, since it had been forever since she badly wanted to see the town. Without wasting a minute, the three immediately went to town to check it out. Since this is Charlotte's first time exploring the town, as soon as they arrived, she was immediately mesmerized by how beautiful the town's architecture is. Seeing Charlotte's expression made Lest wonder if this was Charlotte's first time in town. Charlotte was quick to explain that due to her position and royal title, she rarely got to roam freely around the kingdom and its surrounding towns. Though he does come by from time to time, but her visit is usually due to official duties and not leisure. Which is why, for today's agenda, she just plans to enjoy herself to the fullest to make the most out of her time in town. With that being said, the three just explored various spots around the town, and every single one of them seems to be a refreshing experience for Charlotte. In this short time, Lest managed to see her many sides, and he found it both a beautiful experience. After exploring the city, when it was finally time for them to head back to the Albion mansion, Charlotte expressed her deepest gratitude towards Lest, stating that she had quite a fantastic time exploring the city today. On top of that, she also expressed how surprised she was at how the townspeople really admired Lest, which also made her wonder how Lest did all of this, considering he has quite a busy schedule. With a humble tone, Lest shyly explained that he often sneaks out and visits the town for inspections regularly, hence why he always had a casual chat with the people around. Although this is an act that is not dignified for a noble, Lest still wants to continue doing it since it brings him closer to his people. Charlotte immediately disagreed with him on the part where he said his actions are not dignified. Instead, she commended him for being pure and kind, since earning the people's trust is a greater paramount than anything for a noble. Besides that, Charlotte also feels like he got to know a wonderful side of Lest after spending the afternoon with him. Hearing all of the good things from Charlotte somehow made Lest a little bit shy. He tried to act cool about it while acting all flustered, so Estella also went on to express her opinion, stating that she also shares the same sentiments as Charlotte. Especially after she realized that Lest is not only skilled with a sword, but also a virtuous lord to his people. Though these were nothing but kind words, Lest still felt a little awkward hearing them in real life. As much as he tried brushing the topic off, the girls kept bringing it up, causing Lest to ultimately end up blushing in the end. Then, all of a sudden, their conversation was cut off as the people in the plaza started screaming in fear. A citizen then shouted in fear as monsters started to appear out of nowhere. Everyone immediately begged someone to help them, and as soon as Lest took notice of what was happening, he started wondering why there were monsters even in town. The screams started quietly, but as many monsters appeared, the screams were then heard from all directions. Lest went off to check the situation first, trying to find out just how many monsters there are. Considering there are guards at the gates, he couldn't seem to think of reasons why this thing happened. Then suddenly, he started sensing someone plotting something bad. The only unusual thing he could think of that has happened today is Princess Charlotte being in town, making him speculate that these monsters might be after the princess. Both Lest and Estella seemed to have the same thoughts, so they immediately started forming a plan to ensure the princess's safety. But in the midst of the chaos, instead of just staying behind, the princess insisted that she would also fight. Estella tried her best to stop Her Highness, but Charlotte was quick to explain that, considering the number of monsters, it was best if all three of them took them on. What Charlotte said was definitely right, which is why Estella was left speechless. Since the princess's plan was rational, Lest ended up allowing her to fight with them. But to ensure her safety, he wanted to pair with her so that no matter what happens, he'd be able to protect her. Knowing how strong Lest is, Estella didn't even hesitate anymore. Now that they have formed a plan, the three quickly made their move. With their strength and talent for fighting, they easily managed to take down a number of monsters with just one attack. When they thought they already had the upper hand, a fanged tiger suddenly appeared behind Charlotte, now about to attack her and tear her apart. Fortunately, she managed to dodge it on time, or else she would have been dead by now. As Lest observes the creature, the strong aura that it emits makes Lest wonder if it's equal to or even stronger than a C-rank Gale Wolf. Uncertain of how strong the creature is, Lest plans on quickly backing up Charlotte to ensure that she's safe. But before he could even make his move, another creature appeared, making the timing feel too deliberate. So, quickly, Lest tried his best to reach Charlotte in time despite their distance. Realizing that he might not make it on time, although he badly wanted to keep his powers hidden, but considering the situation, he had no choice but to use wind magic. However, before he could even show it off, Charlotte already went on to cast her holy magic, eventually cutting the monster in half. Though Charlotte was having a hard time activating it in time during her battle against the Gale, but within just 2 weeks, she finally mastered it, which definitely shocked her to the core. Meanwhile, Lest was left amazed on the side, admiring Charlotte's incredible talent. As Charlotte continued doing her part, fighting off monsters and killing them one by one, after a good minute or so, she finally managed to take them all out. Now that everything is finally under control, the townspeople couldn't even contain their happiness and started celebrating their win, thanking Lest for saving them. While everyone is cheering for Charlotte and Lest's win, hiding in a dark alley, a girl suddenly starts to feel a little puzzled about how Lest, who should only have tame powers, even managed to do all of that. Curious to know what's happening, the girl suddenly starts to wonder how Lest even managed to get this strong all of a sudden, making her speculate that the young noble might be hiding something up his tail. Which is why she is now eager to dig a little deeper into this whole thing to expose Lest's true secret. Meanwhile, back at the Albion mansion, Lord Gal is feeling a little frustrated, considering his plans on making Lest disappear didn't work. Despite him ordering his own son to investigate the middle layers of the Arst Forest for a week, Lest managed to survive and didn't even get crippled. On the contrary, he comes back to the mansion every day looking completely satisfied without even a scratch on him. For someone living in this world, the middle layers are far more dangerous than the shallow areas, so for a person to be placed in this place alone, the only aftermath that Gal is expecting is his son's death. Considering Lest is Gal's least favorite son, for Lest to even survive with just his useless taming skill already made Gal furious and frustrated. On top of this, as the news of how Lest defeated the monster that appeared in town reached him, Gal started feeling nauseous all of a sudden. Speechless at how Lest managed to do this all, Gal started to worry since if Lest's reputation improves anymore, there will be even more suspicion on him as a father when Lest dies. And, yet again, the fact that Princess Charlotte is a witness to his deeds even makes this whole thing more frustrating for Gal. That is why Gal now plans to order Lest to investigate the deep layers of the forest. That place is so dangerous that even he, as a sword saint, could die if he is not careful. It is so dangerous that it is not even meant to be explored alone in the first place. Even though Lest has managed to miraculously survive up to now, Gal is confident that his son will surely meet his end this time around. He has now lost his mind, as he is even planning to hire assassins to ensure his son dies without leaving any evidence. What's more grim about all of this is the fact that, as a father, he even blames Lest for causing him to plan all of this. Since Lest was born, his mere existence puts Gal's position at risk, which is why, no matter what it takes, he would make sure his son dies at all costs. Then, all of a sudden, without any notice, the same girl who appeared in town shows up in front of Gal inside his office. Her presence shocked Gal, considering he didn't even sense anything until just now. He tried to knock the woman down, but using her power, the woman hypnotized Gal instead. After hearing Gal's plan, the woman now plans to use him to expose Lest's secret. Now the question is, how will she actually do it? But before that, after the incident that happened in town, the very next day, Lest went on to say goodbye to the princess as they would now make their way back to the capital. Although Charlotte was supposed to stay for a few more days, considering the attacks the other day for Her Highness's safety, they have decided to send her back to the capital as soon as possible. Normally, a carriage would be used for the return, but this time, the higher-ups decided to use teleportation magic to transport the princess. This type of magic requires immense magical power and manpower that even royalties seldom use. But for Charlotte to use it now just shows how grave the situation is. While Charlotte and Lest are having a heartfelt farewell, a maid calls for Lest's attention as his father has summoned him for a talk. Immediately, Lest went on to talk with his father. And, just as he expected, Gal went on to tell him about his plans to send his son to the deepest level of the forest. Though Lest was already expecting this to happen, what he didn't anticipate was the fact that his father actually arranged for a guard to accompany him. But this guard is none other than the woman from earlier, the one who wanted to expose Lest's secret. As soon as Gal brought her up, the woman finally introduced herself as Lav, an A-rank adventurer. Since this is his father's order, there is no way Lest would be able to say no to this. Although the woman looked so innocent, Lest just feels there is something bad about her. But considering this is a task that his father has arranged, Lest had no other choice but to move forward with it. So, just like that, he was now set out for the deep layers with Lav by his side. About an hour later, at the Arst Forest middle layer, Lest couldn't help but feel a little wary of Lav's presence. The fact that his father hired her to guard him just makes him feel a bit suspicious of his father's real intent. Knowing what kind of father he has, Lest is just certain that Gal can't act all kind all of a sudden. As he tried to think of reasons why his father wanted her to be around him, the only two things he could think of were that those two were planning to kill him during the investigation, disguising it as an accident. On the other hand, Lest also has a strong gut feeling that Lav wanted to investigate the truth of how someone like him, who only has Tame, is exploring this forest in the first place. Either way, Lest is certain of one thing, and that is the innocent-looking girl in front of him is his enemy. Because of this, Lest now needs to thoroughly hide his taming abilities, or else he might end up getting exposed by this woman. As the two continued with their journey, Lav tried to be approachable towards Lest, engaging in conversations with him. However, Lest remained cautious at all times, not falling for her tricks at all. As they reached the deeper parts of the middle layer, Lav went on to ask Lest why they haven't encountered even one monster throughout their journey. Lest remained nonchalant as he answered Lav's question, stating that it's because he wanted to avoid encountering monsters as much as possible as they advance. Besides that, his father only ordered him to investigate the forest, so there is really no reason for him to engage in any unnecessary fight. As they walk deeper and deeper into the forest, Lav starts to feel a sudden change in the atmosphere. As the heavy feeling enveloped them, Lav immediately knew they had finally reached the beginning of the deepest part of the forest. They continue walking farther and farther into the forest, and after several 10 minutes have passed, Lav somehow starts to wonder why they still haven't encountered any monsters. Just as soon as she said those words, Lest saw a group of orcs lurking in front of them. Immediately, he told Lav to keep quiet and hide. The two observed the orcs for a minute, and as Lest had a closer look at them, he realized that among the group was an orc general, a creature that is considered a B-rank mid-tier formidable enemy. As its name suggests, it is a troublesome monster that commands subordinate creatures. Despite Lest's efforts to ensure they don't get seen, these orcs still manage to spot them. There are nearly 10 high orcs and orcs in front of them, about to attack. Each one individually is just a D to C rank weakling, but the problem is their numbers. At this point, fighting without using his powers might be quite the challenge, even for Lest himself. Considering the situation they are in, Lest had no other choice but to fight. Since Lav is a mage, Lest went on to give her some orders. While he takes care of the orcs on the front line, he asks Lav to look for an opening and finish them with magic. Immediately, Lest jumped right in to initiate the attack, making himself a decoy so that Lav would have the time to look for an opening. Fortunately, despite Lav's real intention, she still went on to do so as Les asked her to. Because of this, Lest was able to knock the orc down, completely defeating it with just one blow. Seeing him fight amazed Lav, but Lest quickly refuted all of Lav's claims, stating that he was just trying to serve as a decoy and gave the final push, a way for him to stay modest in front of Lav. Now that they have successfully managed to knock down all of the monsters, Lest tells Lav that they should quickly move forward now. However, Lav went silent for a moment before she shyly asked Lest for permission to excuse herself for just a moment. Weirded out by Lav's sudden change in demeanor, Lest went on to allow her to do whatever it was she wanted to do. As soon as Lest gave his permission, Lav didn't even waste a minute and immediately left. As a few minutes passed by, Lest started to get a little impatient. The thought that Lav has been gone for a while makes him wonder where she could be. At this point, Lest is starting to feel a little worried and is even planning on looking for her in the woods already. But then, he starts to feel a little off. The forest strangely started feeling a little too quiet to the point that he couldn't even hear one bird's voice anymore. Then, at that exact moment, a massive ogre quadruple the size of Lest appeared out of nowhere. This shocked Lest, considering an ogre of this caliber shouldn't be present in this area of the deeper floors just yet. The creature right in front of Lest right now is a monster designated A-rank mid-tier ogre. Except for the Black Dragon, this creature is the strongest existence that reigns supreme in the Arst Forest. In the original story, ogres weren't supposed to appear outside their designated area. So, for this creature to appear out of nowhere just means the game is transitioning in ways Lest doesn't expect it to be. As the creature finally made its move, Lest went on to quickly dodge the attack as fast as he could. Though there is no denying the creature is strong, Lest is somehow a little bit relieved that its strength seems to match the original. The highest ranked enemy Lest has defeated so far was a B-rank upper tier gargoyle. The rank difference between that and this A-rank mid-tier ogre is only 2. But that gap is more significant than the numbers suggest. In this world, ranks increase pleasantly up to A rank lower tier, but within A rank and beyond S rank, the difficulty spikes dramatically. A single rank difference creates a hopeless gap. Furthermore, while gargoyles had strong physical resistance but weakness to magic, ogres excel in both offense and defense with high durability. That is why the only way for Lest to defeat this monster is to clash head-on. However, with his current strength alone, defeating even an A-rank lower tier would be difficult. Although, he made it clear that he should hide his power of taming at all costs. Considering the rough situation he is in right now, Lest had no choice but to unleash his full potential. Then, finally, he went on to release his tamed monster, Geralt. While Lav still isn't around, Lest plans on taking down this monster as soon as possible, before Lav could even see them fighting. So, without wasting a minute, the duo immediately went on to engage, hoping they'd be able to take this monster down in one go. As the fight started to intensify, with the ogre unleashing stronger and heavier attacks, Lest went on to cast one of his powerful moves called the Cyclone Blast, to knock the creature down. But, as expected, the ogre is a tough enemy to take down with just one amateur hit. Despite this, Lest remained calm and was surprisingly looking more entertained than before. Meanwhile, Geralt went on to sneak up on an attack, attacking the monster from behind. However, because of the ogre's tough body, even though Geralt has one of the sharpest teeth to ever exist, his attack doesn't seem to work at all. At this point, Lest is slowly starting to worry about the outcome of their fight. The ogre's greatest feature is its overwhelming physical enhancement. Because massive magical power constantly circulates through its body, neither physical nor magical attacks work unless they are serious. That is why Lest ended up using his powerful Wind Slash attack, which, as expected, did cut the monster somehow. Lest felt so proud when his attack got through, but because of this, the monster has now become more agitated and is about to ransack the whole forest out of anger. The good thing is, because of that attack, Lest managed to completely make the ogre divert its focus towards him only. Now that it has temporarily dismissed Geralt from its consciousness, Geralt now has the opening to attack the ogre with full force. Thinking that Geralt is not as strong as Lest, the ogre completely ignored him and lowered his guard towards Geralt. Little did he know, Geralt also possessed the power to cast the Wind Slash technique. With this wide opening, Geralt didn't even waste a minute and immediately went on to unleash his inner beast. And, just like that, the ogre found himself caught up in a very troublesome situation. Now that the two have managed to rattle the ogre's confidence, this means things have become much easier for them to fight. Because the ogre's focus was on Lest at first, it didn't see Geralt as a threat. But now that Geralt has become capable of dealing fatal damage to the ogre now has no other choice but to pay attention to them both now, which means its combat power is now halved. This definitely gave Lest and Geralt the advantage, as long as they do everything the right way. Since the ogre is confused as to who between Lest and Geralt is truly the strongest, it doesn't know how to react to their attacks or what's the next step it needs to take. Because of this, Lest and Geralt immediately grabs the opportunity to use their wind coating technique to lock the ogre down. With 2 times the power, they eventually manage to take the monster out, knocking him down with just 1 blow. Since Lest and Geralt managed to reach the required value for Wind Slash, Lest's tame limit capacity will be updated. At this point, Lest has the choice to tame the ogre they just knocked down, which was faster than Lest expected. Lest went on to really think about what he should do next. Now that his limit has been changed from 2 to 3 creatures tamed, he had to really think thoroughly about whether taming this ogre would be beneficial to him or not. After all, he still plans to continue leveling up in this deep layer until he can tame a 3rd creature. But now that he has already accomplished that, and there aren't any other monsters he wants to tame in this forest as of the moment, Lest is slowly considering taming this ogre now. One of them was Noir, whom he had already tamed the other day. Incidentally, Geralt was more like a coincidence and was not really a monster he was specifically targeting. At this point, he is already satisfied with the results. Besides, if he were to follow the original story, Lest's taming capacity probably has limits, though taming the ogre is quite promising considering its strength and power. However, Lest feels like more monsters out in this forest are more worth taming than this one. But the only problem he is facing right now is where he could actually find those monsters. Using the current Albion territory as a base, those monsters are definitely not within day trip distance. However, explaining the situation to his father and asking for understanding would be nearly impossible too, which is why Lest is now having a hard time deciding what the next step he should take. Then, all of a sudden, Lav shows up out of nowhere, looking all worried. She immediately told Lest that she had heard quite an earthquake and battle sounds earlier, which made her rush back to where Lest was. When she finally turned her head, she then got even more shocked when she saw the ogre's huge body lying lifeless on the side. Realizing that it's a designated A-rank mid-tier monster, Lav almost got speechless at the fact that Lest defeated it all by himself. To avoid making Lav suspicious, Lest immediately formed a fake explanation, stating that the ogre was already quite weakened when he encountered it. Lav immediately believed Lest, considering the several beast fang marks and claw marks seen throughout the ogre's body. This made her believe that the ogre might have encountered a more powerful monster that drove him to near death. In light of their current situation, Lav quickly asks Lest if he is willing to call it a day already, since the incident is more than enough discovery for their investigation. Without hesitation, Lest agreed with her, and as he started walking to leave the forest, Lav stopped him for a moment. Out of nowhere, she suddenly went on to offer Lest a fatigue recovery potion. With a fake smile, Lav explains that since Lest had quite a dreadful fight, it might be better for him to use it beforehand, just in case they encounter more monsters on their way back. Immediately, Lest chugs in the potion without thinking twice. As soon as the liquid reaches his throat, a numbing sensation starts to spread across his body. While Lest is struggling to even breathe, Lav laughs at his naiveness, calling him dumb for easily drinking a bottle containing a paralysis potion. At this point, Lav finally revealed her true identity, introducing herself as Reeb, one of the Demon King's army executives. With that said, it was now her time to eliminate Lest by her very own hands. But before that, Reeb went on to tease him first. She tried to somehow insult him by bringing up how his parents never really cared for him, to the point that they didn't even have the time to teach him not to trust anybody that easily. Since she is having a lot of fun humiliating Lest as a parting gift, because she's so confident she'd kill him any minute now, Reeb decided to share a little bit of her plan with Lest. It turned out Reeb was actually the person who orchestrated both yesterday's monster attack back at the town plaza and today's ogre raid. This is her way of investigating Lest's hidden power. With this plan, she successfully managed to make Lest show his true strength. After witnessing how he used monsters to defeat the ogres, Reeb has concluded that Lest's taming powers have more to them than most people think. But before she does reveal what she knows, Reeb stops herself from spilling so much information to keep the thrill going. Feeling quite confident and strong, Reeb thinks highly of herself. But that confidence was quickly shattered as soon as Lest finally stopped acting. As it turns out, Reeb's poison didn't work on Lest at all. Seeing him stand up made Reeb nervous and confused, since Lest shouldn't be able to move for at least another 30 minutes. Little did she know, Lest wasn't paralyzed to begin with. Upon hearing this, Reeb got so shocked that she almost passed out. Turns out, the Dragon's Blessing that Lest has had properties that protected him from the paralyzing elements of the potion Reeb gave him. The effect of the Dragon's Blessing has two parts. One is the enhancement of magical control, and it also enables a person to gain high resistance to status effects, which is why there is no way that a weak paralysis poison like that could affect Lest in any way. At this point, Lest finally breaks it out with Reeb, revealing that he already figured out her intentions from the start, which is why he decided to play along with it to force her to reveal her true nature, even deep in this lair. However, Reeb couldn't seem to believe Lest's words, stating that he can't sense anything, especially since she put in so much work on ensuring her plan is flawless. It is just hard to believe that a mere human like Lest could see through it. Because of this, Reeb challenges Lest to explain everything to her now to prove that he indeed understood everything. Without hesitation, Lest immediately went on to tell Reeb everything she knew, and he didn't just tell her the superficial things he knew. Instead, he went deeper into the history of this world altogether. He shocked Reeb when he started talking about the Great War that took place 1,000 years ago between humans and demons. That war began with the Demon King's side gaining the upper hand. But then, a hero and a divine dragon suddenly emerged, leading to the Demon King's defeat. Though the Demon King's soul was sealed away, he attempted one last struggle just before that. It involves splitting one's soul into 10 pieces, sending each fragment, the Demon King's fragments, into the future 1,000 years ahead. With this, the fragments ended up getting inhabited randomly by chosen beings among newly born lives, which is why the Demon King's army is now trying their best to collect those soul fragments to resurrect the Demon King. And Lest is among those few who harbor a Demon King soul fragment. As a result, the previously useless skill Tame transformed, giving him the power to control several monsters. On top of that, since Lest already confirmed Reeb's theory after witnessing how Lest defeated those ogres, she is now trying to steal Lest's Demon King's soul fragment. This now explains why she only gave him a paralysis potion, not a lethal explosive or magic. If Lest dies before she can even collect the fragment, it will end up vanishing with him, and that is the last thing she wants to happen. But fighting with her is not really a problem for Lest at all, since upon further observation, Lest ends up concluding that among the Demon King's officers, Reeb is one of the weakest in terms of power. All of this information is something that is not really revealed to the public, so for Lest to know all of the smallest details about it really shook Reeb. This made her wonder if Lest is some kind of prophet or fortune teller of some sort. While Reeb is struggling to come up with a logical explanation of how Lest can know all of this, Lest remains alert. After all, this woman is still the one who killed Lest in the game. Taking that into consideration, Lest made sure that he didn't forget her at all. That is why Lest was confused when Reeb introduced herself as Lav the first time they met. Besides that, in the original story, after stealing the Demon King's soul fragment from Lest, Reeb starts to get a little too cocky, so she tries absorbing it herself and challenges the protagonists. Though it temporarily empowered her, causing her to gain an S-rank strength, but things eventually just went downhill for her, since she couldn't withstand the power of the soul fragment. As a result, she ultimately exploded and died. But since Lest already knows her plan and how the events unfolded in the game, he can now fully stop that from happening. In the end, it all returned to the original story. As Lest kept on summarizing Reeb's actions in the past, the Demon King's army officer started to lose her temper. Although Reeb failed to accomplish her true goal in the original story, with her inability to revive the Demon King, the artistic level of that disgraceful moment eventually caused her to gain considerable character popularity in the fan creation community. But going back to the present, after hearing everything that Lest has to say, Reeb starts to become more curious about knowing how Lest managed to know all of these things, considering this information is only revealed to high-ranking members of the Demon King's army. Although it is quite obvious that Reeb is already pissed at Lest beyond comprehension, Lest maintained his composure, ensuring not to tell a word about what he knows to more of this world. As a result, Reeb starts to feel frustrated once again. At this point, because of her anger, she eventually went on to warn Lest that he would now get what he was asking for, since she would not hold back anymore. Besides that, Reeb doesn't really care what happens to her anymore. After inflicting pain so unbearable, she already thinks that she should be dead. With nothing to lose, Reeb is now ready to get everything out of Lest as much as possible. For the first time, Reeb openly revealed one of the special abilities that was granted to her. Thinking that Lest doesn't have any idea what it is, Reeb was quite cocky to show off her power. However, to her surprise, Lest is actually aware of her so-called rare power. As soon as Lest revealed that he knows she has a transition magic power, Reeb is starting to lose her patience. And at this point, if this continues, she might end up bursting in irritation. With her already having enough of Lest's mind games, Reeb finally unleashes her true strength without warning. Despite Lest looking quite confident, deep inside, he is still rather worried about the outcome of this whole thing. Knowing that the real challenge starts as soon as their fight begins, Lest couldn't be more worried. Although the tension eased up a little bit because of their back and forth exchanges of attacks, Lest still finds the situation easier to misjudge. After all, Reeb is still one of the high-ranking officers of the Demon Army, so there is no doubt that her strength is likely undeniably up par than most, which is also why Lest couldn't simply let his guard down. If his memory serves him right, in the game, Reeb's strength was said to rival the top of an A rank itself. So, in other words, she is a tougher opponent than the ogre he just defeated a while ago. Although Reeb's physical abilities aren't that impressive, there is still no doubt that she can compensate using her other skills. So, with everything he got, he tries his best to dodge each of Reeb's attacks, hopping from one corner to another. Thanks to Reeb's unique ability, Transition Magic Power, her ability somehow allows her to change the form of her magic power at will. This simply means that she can easily create weapons and other materials using her magic powers. Conversely, she can also revert matter into magic, which is something quite fascinating for a Demon Army officer. But the question now is, how does her power really affect Lest? Well, to explain it clearly, if Lest were to touch Reeb without any defense, that action alone can break down his body, leading to death. This simply shows what great power Reeb has that it is truly fit for a Demon Army officer. But despite that, Lest is trying his best to come up with a plan where he could eventually get the upper hand on this fight. He is confident that there are some limitations to Reeb's power. His guts somehow enabled him to think profoundly of the situation. He just knows that there is a power that is equal to or greater than Reeb's. However, this doesn't erase the fact that winning against her alone is going to be difficult, which is why Lest now has no other choice but to release Geralt and give him a hand. Despite this, Reeb doesn't look scared at all. In fact, she is even more excited about knocking these two out. She is so confident that she could easily defeat Lest even if he goes all out with his summoning. Lest, on the other hand, is also aware that he can't possibly win without proper planning. He knows very well that for them to be able to seize that victory, they'll need to force a close combat situation, but even doing this wouldn't be that easy. So, to ensure that they don't waste their energy on nothing, Lest reminds Geralt not to let himself get caught by Reeb at all costs. Right now, they can't withstand Reeb's magic for more than 5 seconds. The only thing they could do was focus their strengths on dodging each of her attacks as much as possible. At this point, Reeb is also starting to get a little impatient with Lest, quite irritated at how precise his countermeasures are. As she starts to get a little infuriated at Lest's schemes, Lest, on the other hand, somehow feels quite honored, taking what Reeb just said as praise. But his words really cut through Reeb's ego, making her even more agitated than she was a while ago. At this point, Reeb warns Lest that this will be the end of him and his sharp tongue. With this, the fight between Lest and Reeb continues to intensify once again. Reeb continued sending several sharp swords towards Geralt and Lest, though the two are doing well dodging each swords one after the other. Lest still felt like they were barely managing to hold on. On top of this, considering the distance they and Reeb have, Lest is starting to feel a little hopeless about winning this fight. Knowing that the only chance they have of winning against this beast is for them to get closer, Lest is trying his best to come up with a better plan. Without any choice, Lest ended up charging in, giving it his all. As Lest approaches, Reeb is so confident that his attacks will not work on her at all. Knowing her abilities, Reeb is even amazed at how fearless Lest is. She is somehow judging Lest's choices, considering anyone pretty much knows that it is not wise to approach her, knowing her abilities. However, Lest actually has something different in mind. Despite knowing the consequences of his actions, Lest still decided to move closer to Reeb, since as long as he doesn't get caught, he will remain unharmed. But before he goes all in with his attack, Lest reminded himself that this isn't about firepower or whatnot. But instead, this fight is about speed. If he doesn't give Reeb the chance to counterattack, he will surely win this fight in the end. As their fight continued, even Reeb started to feel a little threatened by Lest's strength. For some reason, Lest became sharper with his moves this time around. His moves are completely different from the powerful sword techniques he used against that monster earlier. Because of this, Reeb starts to feel a little stress as well, worried that she might actually get defeated. Meanwhile, it seems like Lest is also starting to get the hang of himself. Now that he has finally gained momentum, the only threat that hinders him from achieving that victory lies in Reeb's unique ability. However, Lest really tried to be optimistic, since as long as he can drag Reeb into a close combat, it is no longer impossible for him to fight with her on equal footing. Now that he indeed managed to get closer just like he planned, Lest didn't even waste a minute and immediately went on to let Geralt do his thing as well. With just one order, Geralt immediately unleashed the beast in him, which successfully stopped Reeb for a while. However, at this point, Reeb is already starting to feel more irritated by how Geralt and Lest act up as if they've already won. Because of this, Reeb had no other choice but to also unleash her true beast, hoping this would end their fight once and for all. Normally, a sorceress caught this close wouldn't have any means to counterattack, but for Reeb to handle this volume without incantation just shows why she is one of the best officers of the demon army. However, despite Reeb's unimaginable strength, Lest didn't back down at all. In fact, he is now even more focused than ever. As their fight continues, Lest went on to assure Geralt that there is nothing to worry about at all, adding that as long as they keep attacking while maintaining their distance, everything will work out for them eventually. Although, there is still a chance that, at this distance, a single miscalculation might kill them. Lest is confident that despite how vast Reeb's magical powers are, her brain power still has its limits, which is why Lest will do everything to keep the pressure on until Reeb finally slips up. So, the best choice for him to do now is cast a spell that will lower her visibility of Lest. With what seems to be a smokescreen spell, Lest managed to successfully limit Reeb's vision. Without wasting a minute, Lest and Geralt immediately initiated their plan, since if they don't do it now, they might lose the chance of actually defeating Reeb. As they were about to finally cast their magic, Reeb shocked the two when she steps out of the smokescreen unharmed and angry. Using her extreme transition cloak, Reeb managed to still see through the spell Lest cast a while ago. Lest, on the other hand, didn't even look scared at all, since this is something he already expected Reeb is about to do. The move that Reeb is doing right now is considered one of her ultimate techniques that she used in the game. As the Queen of Magic, Reeb can temporarily release all of her magic power within. In the midst of all this, she eventually wraps herself in the armor of annihilation, turning everything she touches into magic, making it one of her ace in the hole. With that being said, this technique of hers is something that Reebs don't usually use unless an opponent is worthy of it. That is why she was rather amazed at the thought that Lest could draw this out of her. Now that Reeb has finally revealed her true potential, Lest knows that this is not the time for him to let Reeb take control, since if he did, this might be the end of them. So, using his advanced wind magic called Arrow Burst, Lest tried his best to keep Reeb away as much as possible. However, despite his efforts, it seems like his moves don't work on her at all. This just goes on to show that this form of Reeb is practically something that makes her invincible. With her using this form, none of the hero spells could practically touch her or work on her, which is why Lest didn't even waste a minute and immediately warned Geralt to stay away from Reeb as much as possible, stating that if he ever got touched even for a moment, it's already game over for him. In the game, the power of the Demon Lord's fragments combined made it uncontrollable and caused an explosion, so if that were even to happen to them now, they basically put themselves into a self-destruction mode. However, with Reeb not having the Demon Lord's fragment now, that is highly unlikely to happen to them at all. Still, the fact that the Queen of Magic is being active right now drains a massive amount of Reeb's magic and stamina, which simply means, without the Demon Lord's fragments, her power output should be lower than in the game, which gives Lest a way to land an attack. So, with the combination of his body, enhancement, and speed, Lest gives his all to surpass Reeb's. Seeing how Lest went somehow surprised Reeb, since she wasn't really expecting him to even work in such a way. However, this doesn't mean that she feels threatened by his presence at all, and she makes sure that he is aware of that at all costs. So, using the whip of the Armor of Annihilation, Reeb tried to slice Lest using this move. As soon as she saw that Lest is struggling more now than earlier, Reeb couldn't be happier and content with her move. The sheer number of attacks that Reeb sends out is troublesome, but unlike the armor, each whip doesn't pack as much power. Well, at least that is what Lest thought at first. As soon as Reeb's power got stronger, it was at this exact moment that Lest finally realized that the output of her magic is indeed higher than his. Meanwhile, Reeb herself also didn't hide her amazement at how easily Lest managed to dodge her attacks, even though that last attack she did was just a taste of her true power. But despite this, Reeb is still confident that she will win this fight, since for her, miracles don't last forever, and she's willing to do everything to prove it to Lest now. With that being said, Reeb once again cast a powerful spell, sending Lest flying across the forest. At this point, the Queen of Magic slowly consumes a lot of her own powers with self-inflicted techniques, so the only thing that Lest has to do right now is hold out until that moment arrives. But the question now is, will Lest last that long, or will his body give up on him? Just as he predicted, the longer the battle drags on, he can slowly see Reeb's stamina and magic draining away. But he just needs to keep attacking as well, since making any mistake, even as little as it is fatal for them. After all, this battle really revolves around who will get tired first. But it was clearer than day to Lest who the real winner is. For the whole time since Reeb cast her strongest magic, all that he and Geralt did was flee without being able to fight back, showing who the real master in this game really is. As their battle dragged on, it became increasingly obvious how exhausted both sides were. Their breathing grew ragged, their movement slower, their once sharp attacks becoming noticeably dull. Yet, despite the heaviness they carry in their bodies, especially the sweat clinging to Reeb's skin, Reeb remained the only one who refused to back down. As it turned out, the difference between them wasn't stamina or magic power, but instead, it was their individual willpower. Despite the long fight, Reeb simply hadn't given up just yet. However, deep inside, Lest knew she was struggling too, since he could clearly see the flicker of strain in her eyes whenever she summoned another spell. But even so, he couldn't stop himself from worrying about the outcome of their fight. Considering how Reeb's confidence didn't waver at all despite of that, and it only seemed to grow stronger as the fight continued, Lest starts to wonder how they could even get out of this mess now. The fact that she carried herself as though victory was already in her grasp, as if every moment that passed merely confirmed how superior she was. To make things worse, she never missed a chance to taunt Lest. Even though she was tired herself, she found the time to ridicule Lest with a crooked smile. She told him, almost casually, that the gap between their strengths could never be closed, no matter what he did or no matter how hard he tried. She added that from the moment they started this battle, the outcome had already been set in stone, so there was no alternate future where Lest could stand on equal footing with her. As he listened to her words, Lest couldn't fully deny them. A large part of him knew she was speaking the truth. The fact that his magic reserves were nearly depleted and his body felt heavier with every step, on top of Geralt, who had been fighting at his side since the very beginning, fighting Reeb any longer while they are in such a bad condition is definitely not the way to go. Meanwhile, Reeb, on the other hand, still had what seemed like several times more magic essence pulsing within her. So Lest is certain that if they took even one more direct hit, if they endured one more flurry of her lashes, it might really be the end of them, since they simply didn't have enough strength left to withstand her attacks. However, little did Reeb know, the only thing she failed to notice because of her arrogance was that this was exactly what Lest had been waiting for. This entire struggle, this entire exhausting exchange was actually part of his plan. It seems like it was really his plan to allow her to chase them down, making her believe she still held the upper hand. Because now that everything was in place, now that the board had finally been set the way it needed to be, Lest finally revealed his true intention. As it turned out, all this time, he had been luring Reeb toward one specific location called the Lair of the Black Dragon. At first, Reeb denied it, but she tried to make herself laugh in disbelief, assuming it was another desperate bluff on the part of Lest. But then, the ground started to tremble, and the air thickened for no reason. And from the shadows of the bright sky, a monstrous shape slowly emerged. The black dragon revealed itself at last, and the moment Reeb laid eyes on it, her entire body froze. The confidence she flaunted so proudly a while ago shattered in an instant. She is now trembling when she finally understands the dangers she had walked straight into. And for the first time in the battle, she didn't know what to do next. Reeb froze in fear, and as Noir approached her, getting nearer and nearer, Reeb couldn't even move an inch. On the other hand, Lest really looks proud, considering Noir looks like he has gotten bigger with his level up since the last time Lest saw him. While things are escalating in ways Lest didn't really expect, he starts to reflect on the things that happened this day. Reeb, who calls herself the adventurer Rev, appeared before him in the most unexpected way possible. As soon as Lest saw her, he immediately knew something was up with the gal. Having seen through her aims from that point, he decided to use that to eliminate her instead. Among all the possible scenarios he has built up in his mind, the worst case of all is that his special taming abilities will be exposed, while Reeb escapes and shares the information with the demon army. With Lest's current strength, he is well aware of the fact that he is still no match for the other demon army executives. That is why he thought that he needed to finish off Reeb here for certain. But still, he knew well how difficult that would be. In the game, Reeb only made her move against Lest after all his tamed monsters were wiped out. And as we can see from what's happening now, Reeb really has a cautious personality, meaning she won't initiate battle unless she is certain of victory. In fact, the official character description she had on the game states that despite her great pride, she has a cautious personality with a strong attachment to life. That's exactly why, when the ogre attacked earlier, Lest immediately saw through that it was Reeb's doing, but deliberately played along. Not choosing to retreat, nor facing it alone, and certainly not calling Noir to overwhelm it together. Lest knew that fighting with just Garel and him would barely cause them to win, judging that to be the best choice and put on that performance. Not only to let her know his taming was special, but also to make Reeb mistakenly believe that was their full power. Sure enough, Reeb fell into that trap. While preparing the paralysis poison as insurance, it was because Reeb judged Lest as an opponent she could defeat with brute force if necessary, revealing her true identity, and challenged Lest like this. On top of that, because of Lest's plan, Reeb also used her trump card, which is being the Queen of Magic Power, without hesitation. But all of that happened within the palm of Lest's hand, and Reeb didn't even realize it. Little did she know, the game events and Reeb's personality were all a situation Lest could create precisely because he knew both. And having anticipated the situation from the ogre attack, he had already made two other important moves. Through the pathway created by taming, he had requested Noir's assistance. At first, to be able to pull this one off, Lest had Noir hide for the meantime, and then suppress his presence until now. And all of this was just to defeat Reeb here and now. Now that Reeb is fully aware of the fact that his massive black dragon is a monster Lest commands, she couldn't even believe it at first. At this point, Lest is also trying to intimidate Reeb, telling her that since she calls herself the Queen of Magic Powers, he will now also not hesitate to counterattack her with his King of Magic Power skills. With just one command, he gives to Noir, the black dragon, immediately as Lest said, and cast its armor of annihilation. Reeb couldn't seem to believe everything that she was witnessing right now. The fact that a mere human like Lest could command a dragon as majestic and powerful as Noir is definitely something out of the ordinary. As Noir's attacks finally reach Reeb, she tries her best to block the scorching flame. However, it seems like none of her efforts are actually working, considering how overpowering Noir's attack was. Noir's attack was so overwhelmingly powerful that the entire surrounding area vanished behind a wall of thick smoke and raging flames. Even Lest himself couldn't believe what he was seeing. The ground trembled so hard, and the air crackled with unstable magic. So, for a moment, everything felt eerily still that Reeb started to feel fear rushing through her body. At this point, Reeb was clearly starting to lose her energy, not knowing what to do next. She was panting heavily, desperately trying to catch her breath as exhaustion weighed down on her limbs. After witnessing and experiencing Lest's true power firsthand, a cold realization began to settle in her chest. she couldn't help but wonder if this terrifying force she was facing was truly the power befitting the king of magic powers. As her mind raced with curious questions about Lest's true identity, his origins, and the full extent of his abilities, Lest, on the other hand, kept his focus sharp. He analyzed every detail of their situation with calm precision, not letting his guard down at any cost. Although the Armor of Annihilation managed to suppress Noir's destructive breathing attack to some degree, Lest still considered it a worthwhile exchange. At the very least, Reeb no longer had enough strength left to fight all three of them at once as she had earlier, and that alone already shifted the entire flow of the battle in their favor. Reeb herself understood this harsh truth perfectly well, with her magic rapidly draining and her stamina dropping even faster. She knew she wouldn't last long if she continued forcing herself into a direct fight, so in a last attempt to save her life, she turned around and tried to escape. However, Lest had anticipated this from the start, so before she could even gain proper distance, Lest immediately called for Garel and Noir to intercept her and cut off her path. Reeb fought back with whatever power she had left, conjuring spells meant to push the monsters away and keep them from closing in on her. But despite her determination, she quickly realized how hopeless it was. The combined strength of Noir and Garel was something she simply couldn't overpower in her current state. On top of this, Lest himself had already begun to move, adding even more pressure and making Reeb's panic rise. She desperately tried to convince herself that Lest's attacks wouldn't work on her anymore, that somehow she could still withstand him using her powers. But Lest, filled with unwavering confidence, knew for certain that he would break through her strength somehow. And this time, he was determined to end things on his terms. At the back of his mind, as long as he wraps layer upon layer of compressed, dense magical power, defense wouldn't be necessary. He made a decision to pour all the magical power remaining in his body into this fight. The destructive power hidden within the Stormblade of his. Lest would do everything to ensure that it rivals the full power breadth that Noir just delivered. And, on top of that, the firepower unleashed is endlessly amplified by his sword speed. Right now, Lest is a tamer, and simultaneously a swordsman trained by Elna, the strongest swordsman in town. When he first reincarnated into this world, this was the power he had been refining since he had nothing. In the end, he entrusted everything to this sword. If wind coating, wind slash, is a delicate technique that cuts lines with a sharp blade, then this is a destructive strike that crushes surfaces with overwhelming storms. And this technique's name is none other than Wind Coating Storm Sword, the ultimate technique that will bring this demon down. However, despite how strong Lest's technique is, Reeb was still alive, but this time around, a lot more frail than ever. As soon as Lest got closer to her, she immediately warned him that if he was planning to kill her, he should reconsider it, since other Demon Army executives would come after him very soon. However, knowing the whole story, Lest knows that Reeb doesn't have any friends among the executives, and this was probably another independent action on his own accord, which means she hasn't shared information with anyone at all. At this point, Reeb is starting to accept the fact that she might actually end up dead by the end of the day. However, although Lest did want to really kill her, considering her contributions to the story, but for some reason, he does start to feel some resistance all of a sudden. Even though Reeb is a demon, she still has the same appearance as a human, and could even speak the language and communicate with other humans. So, as a kind person, it is natural for Lest, who was born and raised in peaceful Japan, to hesitate in going through with this plan at a cost. But right now, considering he is inside a world with a different identity, living as Lest Albion, the young man tried his best not to feel any remorse for someone like Reeb. After all, thinking about the path ahead, he might eventually need to kill not just demons, but humans too, which is why he tries his best to see the situation as the perfect time to make that resolve. While Lest is literally having a dilemma on what he should do and not do, Reeb went on to start acting up, accepting her fate, and even pushing Lest to get this whole thing over with quickly. After all, as someone who was born as a demon and is known as part of the Demon Army executives, no matter what happens, Reeb made a decision not to beg for her life from an opponent who defeated her. As Lest was already on the verge of finally dropping the act, a window suddenly appeared right before him. In the said window, it seems like it openly exposes Reeb's real feelings and what she actually truly feels about the situation. Even though she made it look like she was someone tough, Reeb actually wanted to live her life and beg for mercy. But as a demon, her pride stops her from doing all of that. At this point, since Reeb has already accepted her defeat, as a said demon creature, Lest now has a choice if he wants to tame her or not. Now reading this really shocked Lest, as he didn't really expect a demon like Reeb to actually be up for taming. In the game, Lest can only tame monsters, although there were exceptional cases where he could tame other than monsters using cheat codes, but none of those were demons of any sort. At this point, Lest doesn't even know how to react or what to do, considering there was never any mention in the game that Lest had the power to tame demons. To begin with, successfully taming requires defeating the target in battle as a prerequisite, but demons are extremely powerful beings to begin with. Considering how the present Lest managed to actually tame this demon down, perhaps the original Lest's abilities made it difficult to defeat them in the first place. Even if he could defeat them, another condition is that the opponent must show a willingness to serve. Considering that point, among the proud demons, types like Reeb who want to survive at any cost are rare. The reason the original Lest couldn't tame demons might have been related to that. Since Lest is taking quite a while to make up a decision, Reeb is starting to lose patience and finally asks him to just do it and kill her. However, Lest was so preoccupied with his thoughts that he didn't even listen to any words Reeb had to say. At the back of his mind, the information told within the game isn't everything about this world. Now the only question that still lingers in his mind is whether he would actually tame Reeb or not. Reeb's transition magic has truly powerful potential. While it has drawbacks like being less effective against stronger opponents, its versatility is remarkable. After Garel and Noir, now Reeb, so having magic type abilities in a row might be a bit too unbalanced for Lest. But considering the characteristics of monsters he plans to tame in the future, Lest is actually having some thoughts of taming Reeb in the end, considering it would actually balance out his team somehow. However, the only problem he might have to deal with is Reeb's personal will. Lest doesn't really have any intention of keeping anyone near him who even has the slightest chance of betrayal. So, instead of just going through with his taming just like he used to, he decided to have a serious talk with Reeb first. He started off by telling her that he had a proposal for her, making Reeb curious. But before she could react badly, Lest told her that, depending on her answer, he might actually spare her life. However, Reeb immediately saw through Lest's plans, so instead of listening, she immediately told him to back off, as someone like her would never ever accept a proposal from an enemy like Lest. At this point, Lest has actually lost hope, and has now decided to eventually kill Reeb, just like he plans to. But then, Reeb surprised him by actually saying that she is willing to be a little generous this time around and actually hear him out first. At this point, Lest is actually starting to get pissed, considering how Reeb seems to just be playing with him. But before he let his frustration get the most of him, he decided to be as direct as possible. Without hesitation, he went straight to her and asked her if she was willing to serve him in exchange for sparing her life. Reeb was a little confused about what Lest actually meant by all of this, so to make it clear to her, Lest decided to explain the situation. He started off by telling her that his taming skills can command not just monsters, but demons too, which is why, if Reeb wishes, Lest would like to add her to his followers. With Lest saying this all so casually, Reeb was stunned at first. At first, it may seem like she is not up to it, but eventually, she expressed how the proposal certainly didn't sound bad at all, depending on how a person looks at it. But the important question now is whether Lest could actually trust her or not. Without using flowering words, Reeb immediately cut to the chase and addressed the elephant in the room. She went on to openly state that she could easily pretend to obey him and betray him later, so why would Lest even want to get into trouble with all of that, even though he knows there is a possibility of such a situation happening in the future. Although Reeb tried to act cool about it, Lest could actually see her true feelings through his window, and currently, Reeb is actually willing to accept the proposal immediately just to survive. Lest just tried to understand her situation, since this is supposed to be her way of somehow maintaining the last bit of pride she has left. So, as his last card, Lest ended up using his mind-reading powers and exposed Reeb right in front of her. As soon as Lest started spilling out all of her inside thoughts and her true feelings right at the moment, Reeb started to get embarrassed and immediately told Lest to stop saying any words anymore. Although he isn't actually reading her mind himself, this act should be enough to make Reeb believe he actually can. Besides, even without mind reading, a special pathway automatically forms between Lest and his taming targets. Like when he asked Noir for help, they can immediately share emotions and intentions to some degree, And on top of that, Lest could also restrict some of the tamed subject's actions by giving commands through the pathway. Lest thought his ability was unnecessary for Garel and Noir, with whom he has a trusting relationship, but he never expected it would be useful in a situation like this. When Reeb plots a betrayal, he can easily detect it and deal with it, making it easy for him to form a contract with a demon like her without worries. Which is why, since Reeb badly wanted to stay alive and her skills are something that Lest could use in the long run, Lest decided to finally form a decision and tame Reeb to be his own. But before anything else, he also reminded Reeb to try her best in reforming herself to serve him at all costs. Since Reeb doesn't really have a choice, the only thing she can do now is agree with everything that Lest says. As soon as Reeb accepts the offer, the taming ritual will eventually start. Considering how powerful the two are, as soon as the two joined forces, the powerful aura was so undeniable that even Lest was stunned, witnessing it firsthand. Since the taming process was successful, part of the taming target's power will now be granted to Lest, which means that he has already acquired the skill Transition Magic. On top of this, since he has succeeded in his third taming, Lest has also acquired the skill called Mimicry as a bonus. Mimicry is a skill where, when a person consumes magical power, they can partially change the appearance of tamed subjects and the tamer. What's also great about this skill is that it can also be used on the tamer himself, meaning Lest could also cast it on himself and make himself look like the others, which he finds very useful in various applications. While Lest is undeniably happy with what he acquired, Reeb was slowly losing her mind on the side, not wanting to accept the fact that she actually accepted Lest's proposals. Lest can easily notice that Reeb hasn't been able to grasp the current situation yet, but he is very confident that she'll get used to it eventually. In fact, Lest himself is somewhat confused about understanding the situation himself, but as much as possible, he tries to just go with the flow for now. But setting all that aside, Lest is extremely happy that everything worked out well today. But before ending the day, he also thanks Garel and Noir for helping him achieve victory during their fight. He is well aware that he wouldn't be where he is right now if it weren't for Garel and Noir's efforts. With that being said, since everything is well taken care of now, Lest now plans on heading back to the mansion. With much authority, he calls for Reeb to follow him, and for some obvious reason, Reeb is still pissed off at how the events have actually turned out. Since the Albion is a bit far away from where they are currently, the group immediately walks as fast as possible. Along the way, Garel couldn't help but look at Reeb with that snobbish stare, considering how mind-lost Reeb looks. Although taming her was good, the only problem Lest has to deal with right now is how to keep her close by as much as possible. Since this is the first time someone has actually managed to tame a demon like her, there is no doubt that it must be quite the shock and trauma on Reeb's part. Currently, she looks so down as if she has lost her soul in that fight, as if her spark died as soon as she accepted Lest's proposal. Meanwhile, looking at her, Lest starts to wonder to himself that even though he can give some commands and restrictions through the pathway, he still thought that he'd feel uneasy unless he keeps her close as much as possible. After all, betrayal and various problems may arise if he ends up losing track of her. At this point, Lest starts to wonder to himself what he should do now. As he tries to contemplate, he ends up concluding that the simplest thing to do now is to have her live in the dimensional housing like Garel. As soon as Reeb heard him saying that, she immediately stood against it, stating that she would never live in the same place as the dog, calling the dimension a mere doghouse. Garel didn't quite like her attitude, so the two almost fought if Lest didn't intervene. Since Reeb doesn't want to live with Garel, Lest suggested that she could just camp out in the forest if she wanted to. However, this was also something that Reeb is really against. As someone who has lived quite a comfortable life as a demon executive almost her entire life, Reeb demanded that Lest book her a room at an inn in town, something that Lest was shocked to hear. Although he already knew Reeb was such a brat, he never really expected she had the face of a rock and to even have the audacity to demand all of that from him. But, jokes aside, if Reeb really doesn't like the dimensional housing, then she has no other choice but to live with him in the mansion. Now, the only problem they need to come up with is how they will convince his father to accept Reeb into their mansion. Then suddenly, Lest remembered that Reeb had once mentioned that someone was trying to hire an assassin, but she had intervened. Immediately, Reeb told him about it, stating that she was able to do it using her transition magic. The true value of transition magic isn't just in combat, but in its versatility to demonstrate power in all kinds of situations. For example, there's a technique called wavelength matching that adjusts magical power properties to synchronize with the target. Using this allows for thought manipulation and brainwashing to a degree that doesn't go against the target's instincts, like stimulating an ogre's combat instincts to make it leave its territory, or making Gad accept suggestions that align with his goal of hiring an assassin without resistance. There are other applications too, like during the monster attack in the castle town, where Lest dissolved the monster's magical power into the surroundings to hide their presence. Ever since the beginning, Lest was already aware that Gad was wary of him, but he didn't think he'd go as far as sending assassins to kill him. Now he can fully understand why the original Lest developed such a twisted personality, and it was all because of his father. So if Gad is going to use such methods, Lest has to also respond with appropriate means of his own. With that being said, the two now head back to the mansion with a plan in mind. As soon as they returned to the mansion, they first reported to Gad that there were no abnormalities in the deepest part. Though Gad looked dissatisfied, he ordered that only Reeb remain to tell the detailed story, and so did she. At this point, Lest and Reeb finally went on to do their plan. While Reeb tells everything to the Count, Lest patiently waits outside for her. After a couple of minutes, Reeb finally got out of Gad's office, and there, she immediately told Lest everything she said. Just as Lest instructed, Reeb went on to tell Gad that during their investigation, Lest was on guard, and there was no opening for her to take him down. Because of this, just as Lest wanted, Reeb went on to take this chance to casually ask Gad for permission to let her serve, not just as a guard, but as a servant to their family at the moment, while quote-unquote gaining Lest's trust. The two made it look like Gad was on the upper hand, and little did the Count know, this is Lest's way to let Reeb stay at the mansion together with him for surveillance. Although Reeb openly used transition magic as Lest suggested, it was a bit of a surprise that Gad still believed everything she said so easily, making it all anticlimactic. Now that Reeb has the permission to stay at the mansion, Lest will have to move faster, since sooner or later, Gad will start to feel something is off. But when that happens, Lest will ensure that they devise another strategy to ensure everything is in its place. Fast forward a couple of days. Lest was a little amused seeing how Reeb was struggling to get along with the other maids. Besides being a guard, she ended up becoming Lest's personal attendant. The frustrated look on her face says it all, that she is already caught up with everyone's business at this mansion. But in her free time, Gad still assigns her to do various menial tasks, making her schedule quite packed. As the tension between Reeb and the other maid starts to intensify, Lest immediately stays out of trouble and heads to the training grounds to train. While he was minding his own business, filled with some random thoughts to think about, Lest's sister Rain Albion came out of nowhere, calling him out shyly. She is 1 year younger than Lest, and just like him, Rain's mother was the deceased second wife. Rain is also known as a sub-character who appeared in the game Symphonia of Swords and Magic. Although Lest was aware that he still had one sibling, he never once expected Rain to be the one to approach him so openly like this. It wasn't that he disliked her, but far from it. The relationship between the original Lest and Rain, before he was reincarnated into this body, wasn't exactly what anyone would call close. They were siblings, yes, but only in the most technical sense. Rain had always wanted to bridge the gap and genuinely bond with her older brother. Yet Lest, whether due to puberty, awkwardness, or simply not knowing how to interact with her, kept his distance. It wasn't hostility, but was merely just a quiet, unspoken wall that neither side managed to break down. Then came his reincarnation, and with it, the burden of fitting into a life that originally wasn't his. Between adapting to the new world, understanding the expectations of the Albion family, and living under the shadow of the divine oracle ceremony tradition, where only those who completed the ritual were allowed to die together, their already fragile sibling relationship grew even thinner. Their mealtimes were separated, their schedules hardly aligned, and any accidental encounters became so rare that Rain felt like a distant figure rather than his little sister. Because of all of this, Lest had internally accepted the idea that they simply wouldn't talk much, or even see each other as often as other siblings would. That was why he was completely caught off guard when Rain suddenly approached him on her own. Not only did she come looking for him, but she actually initiated the conversation, something he had never imagined her doing. For a moment, Lest even wondered if she was forced or pressured into it, but seeing how nervously she fidgeted and how tightly she clutched the hem of her dress, he realized this was her own decision. And that only made it more surprising. Since they were already here face to face, Lest decided to take the chance and engage in a proper conversation with her. But the moment he greeted her, Rain froze in shyness. It was almost adorable that, despite how nervous she was, she tried her best to interact with her brother at all costs. As soon as she opened her mouth, she spent the next several seconds trying to piece together the correct words. Her cheeks were slightly pink, and her voice trembled every time she tried to speak. It took her a good moment to steady her breathing before she finally managed to talk without stumbling too much. Once she calmed down, Rain immediately began sharing the things she had heard about her brother. For the past week, news about Lest had been spreading everywhere, from how he won duels against Edward and Sidward, how shocking his victories were, and how even the Academy staff seemed unable to stop whispering about him. Then, there were the far more dramatic stories, where Lest ended up becoming friends with Princess Charlotte, defeating the monsters that appeared in town, and handling situations that even adults would hesitate to deal with. Rumors had flown faster than the wind, and Rain had absorbed all of them with wide-eyed fascination. To Lest, these were things he had dealt with out of necessity, but to Rain, it was like watching a legend unfold in front of her. She looked at him with eyes full of admiration, genuine, bright, and almost sparkling. And then, without hesitation, she told him the words that made his breath hitch for a bit. As an older brother, Rain now looks up to him like no other. Considering Lest's reputation, Rain now wanted to be just like him. She wanted to grow strong, confident, and capable, just like her big brother. That's why she gathered every ounce of courage she had to approach him today, hoping that he, her newly admired brother, would teach her what she needed to do and guide her so she could stand proudly like him someday. Hearing all of this somehow made Lest realize that there's actually someone looking at him, not with fear or curiosity, but with pure, innocent admiration, making this moment far more precious than he expected. Hearing this was such a shocker to Lest, as it was never really in his bingo card that his sister would even want to be just like him. So immediately, out of curiosity, he went on to ask her the reason why she wanted to in the first place. Without any sugarcoating, Rain answered Lest's question straight to the point, telling him that she simply thought it was so amazing of her brother to even manage doing all of that. All their life, people have looked down on Lest like he was a nobody. That is why Rain really admired how her brother never gives up and keeps working hard in any environment, not to impress others, but to really improve as a person. That is why she now wants to become just like that too, even if she may sound so incoherent. For her to even say all of this so straightforwardly without stuttering made Lest admire her more. Besides, he completely understands where his sister is coming from. Like him, Rain hasn't had a good position within the family for a while, considering how Jira always calls their mother the second wife, aka a mistress, on top of the other family members who go along with it. Perhaps because she was raised in such an environment, Rain's personality became introverted, causing her to view her future so pessimistically. In such circumstances, her brother in the same situation was given the useless skill Tame in the Divine Oracle ceremony. Normally, that would only worsen his unfortunate position, but seeing Lest continue to work hard and steadily produce results afterward must have held on to a small hope in Rain's heart. If so, what Rain is seeking probably isn't a specific method to become stronger, but just to become one. Even in this hopeless situation, she wants to know the reason why her brother can continue working hard without giving up. Although Lest couldn't possibly tell her about the reincarnation part or even about his taming skills, Lest immediately tried thinking of other ways to lift up Rain's spirit. Then, finally, he thought of something somehow. The method to revive a depressed mental state has only existed as one thing from the start. So to ensure that his sister actually learned something from all of this, Lest decided to actually let her do some strength training for starters. Although Rain was a little hesitant about doing it, since it was her older brother who told her to do so, she had no other choice but to say yes. As soon as they arrived at the training hall, Lest immediately asked her to do some warm-up exercises. As soon as she finished doing all of it, Lest went on to start with the proper training. As Lest watches his sister, it somehow reminds him of that iconic scene representing the original Lest. Although at first glance, Lest may be originally called a villain noble because he is an antagonist who gets in the protagonist's way, the present Lest actually thinks otherwise. He personally thinks that it is because the original Lest has committed a great sin, and it's none other than that family massacre. Lest, who went berserk in the middle of the story, killed his own family with his own hands, except for one person, and that is none other than Rain. The reason why Lest spared only her was never explained in the story and remained unknown. Now, this somehow made Lest wonder if it is because Rain was also a child of the second wife, just like him, or if it was related to that skill she possessed called the Supreme Grade skill, Sword God. This skill is known to be one of the strongest skills that surpasses even Sword Saint, which Gad and the eldest son possess. In fact, within the story, Rain was the character most blessed with sword talent. After Lest's death, there was an event scene where Rain wielded her sword just once. Despite being 1 year younger than the protagonists, Rain managed to cut down powerful monsters with overwhelming talent. Her genius was only permitted because her active role was limited to a single event. Making her act during that time was something that could be called a cheat. On top of that, Rain also mentioned during that time that she actually noticed how her brother's behavior began to get strange shortly after she awakened to Sword God. Considering that, it seems Rain isn't unrelated to Lest's rampage, but the current him just doesn't understand the true meaning of it. But one thing is for sure, and that is Rain will be given the Sword of God in the Divine Oracle ceremony months from now, which is why Lest trains her to considerable strength from now. There is no doubt that she will be able to benefit from it one way or the other. Besides, Rain becoming stronger doesn't really contradict his goals, so Lest isn't quite worried about genuinely helping her. So, to ensure she actually reaches her full potential, Lest decided to also start with her sword training, hoping that this will give Rain even a little confidence in using her skills. As they finally started their training, Lest wasn't surprised at how good Rain actually was at this. As expected of the future sword god, her moves were definitely sharp and clean. Even Lest himself could attest that Rain's movements are much better than when he first got reincarnated. Their training lasted for a good hour or so before Lest finally decided to call it a day. As soon as they finished all of that training, Rain immediately tried to catch her breath, trying her best to regain her energy from doing all of that. While she was at it, Lest went on to commend her for doing so well, keeping up until the end. Although he lowered the intensity of his attacks for her, Lest was still impressed at how good Rain actually is for a beginner. Since doing all of this was really fun for Rain, Rain shyly asked her brother if they could do this again somehow. Without hesitation, and with a wide smile on his face, Lest immediately told his sister that they can definitely do so sometimes, when they are both not that busy. Meanwhile, while the two siblings are having fun, Reeb on the other hand is experiencing the opposite. She can't seem to believe that she is actually cooking, doing the laundry, and even cleaning for this family. As she remembered, she was the one who told Gad that she was willing to serve Lest to gain his trust. Reeb actually starts to feel a little regretful about doing so. Although she only signed up to become Lest's personal maid, it was definitely not part of her plan to do menial tasks too. While she suffers from doing all of this, Lest enters the scene, looking quite happy that Reeb ended up getting frustrated doing all of this. Although he definitely enjoys seeing her suffer. But as someone who formed a contract with her, Lest assured Reeb that he would talk to his father once the time is right, telling him that Reeb has already gained his trust. This way, the amount of menial work that Reeb has to do will definitely decrease one way or the other. But besides all of this, Lest also has something he wanted to tell Reeb about their future plans. While she keeps herself busy doing the chores, Reeb was a little confused about what Lest was trying to say. Considering all this time, she thought the only plan was for them to keep defeating monsters in Arst Forest like before. Although there is no doubt that Lest did plan on doing just that before, after he managed to tame Reeb, the situation has changed a bit, which is why he is now thinking of changing that approach and trying something new. Specifically, with Reeb's transition magic and the newly acquired mimicry skills he has. Using these two abilities, Lest is certain that they can move on to the next stage without worries. So, instead of just training and defeating monsters for taming purposes, Lest ended up with a decision to head to the Adventurers Guild now and become an adventurer himself. Now hearing this definitely shocked the demon out of Reeb, as she never expected Lest would actually have such thoughts in the first place. As they made their way to the Adventurers Guild, Reeb finally went on to ask Lest why he even wanted to go to the guild, wondering if he was somehow planning to make some pocket money. Although that was a good assumption to make, considering a lot of people do join the guild to earn extra cash, that is not actually the case for Lest. In fact, he actually wanted to join more for the ID card than the money, since if he had the Adventurer ID, he would easily be able to challenge dungeons, which would enable him to gain more power eventually. Since Reeb is part of the demon army, she isn't really exposed to many dungeons, hence why she doesn't have much knowledge about them either. So to fully make her understand, Lest decided to explain what a dungeon is from scratch. Lest started off by stating that dungeons are isolated spaces where various gimmicks and monsters appear. In the game, dungeon exploration was a crucial element, and the excellent items obtained there were indispensable for the protagonist's growth. Since there was a limit to the experience points gained from defeating forest monsters, Lest thought it would be more efficient to strengthen themselves through items instead. Although this is quite a nice idea, Reeb still wonders how they will pull this off, considering it would be quite difficult to find a dungeon with good items at the very least. But it seems like they don't have to worry anymore since Lest already has a plan for that. After all, he is a reincarnator with game knowledge from his previous life. Even if dungeons unexplored in this world, he knows everything from internal gimmicks to the monsters that appear. Although Reeb does get why Lest wanted to go to a dungeon, the only thing she doesn't quite get is how the act of wanting to go to the dungeon relates to the ID card at all. If Lest were some random citizen, Reeb doesn't get why he wanted to get his hands on that ID. However, the fact that Lest is still, after all, an Albion, Reeb thought that this should somehow give him the pass to go through those said dungeon checkpoints freely, without worrying about getting the said ID. Reeb was right on that part, but Lest thinks that it is actually the problem. Considering his family background, Lest knows that if he moves around as Lest Albion, information will reach his father immediately, which is something that he wants to avoid at all costs. Since his father only wants him dead soon, doing some dungeon missions will definitely make Gad's blood boil. Because of this, Lest wanted to keep this whole thing from his father to ensure that the old man doesn't interfere with his plans at all. This has been a source of worry for him since he first got reincarnated, and the solution he came up with is to create an ID under a different name at the Adventurers Guild. Besides, anyone can register at the guild as long as they pay. Now, the only problem Reeb thinks Lest will encounter is the fact that he is pretty much recognized by the townspeople, making it impossible for him to stay low-key like he plans on doing. However, that wouldn't be the case at all, since Lest now has the skill he newly acquired from taming Reeb, and that is mimicry. Using this skill, he would be able to mimic the looks of other people to keep his real identity undisclosed. Since he is the only male in the Albion family with black hair, Lest decided to change it to gray so that other people would not recognize him as Lest. On top of that, before they start with this plan and all, just to be safe, Lest also decided to get some new clothes and weapons for their mission. As soon as they arrive at the town square, the two immediately check some shops where Lest bought all he needed. While searching around the stores for the perfect weapon to buy, Lest ended up deciding on purchasing the short sword, and he has two reasons as to why. One is to register at the Adventurers Guild as a swordsman, not a tamer. The other is to prevent rumors about a strange adventurer who uses a wooden sword as their main weapon. Besides, a wooden sword with low material density that can hold more magical power through wind coating is actually more useful than mediocre weapons. But desperate times call for desperate measures. Then, finally, after getting all the goods, the two eventually went to the Adventurers Guild to officially sign up. Without hesitation, Lest immediately went straight to the receptionist and told her that he'd like to register as an adventurer. Since they are here for new registration, the receptionist asks them to write down their names and occupation. To ensure Lest's real identity isn't exposed, he decided to go through with a fake name under the alias Ares, while Reeb decided to go on with just Rav. Since the two are quite new, the receptionist then asks them if they wanted to take the rank up exam, which is something Lest isn't familiar with. So, to give them an idea of what a rank up exam is, the receptionist went on to explain everything to the two. According to her, all new registrants start from the lowest F rank, just like in any other story. But by taking the exam, one can actually have a chance to start from an appropriate rank. For frontline classes, they'll have a mock battle with a senior adventurer. Meanwhile, for magic classes, one can inject magical power into a magical power measuring device, and their rank will be determined by the value shown on the crystal ball. As the receptionist explains all of this, Lest actually starts to get fascinated by the thought of taking the said exam. In the game, rank certification was done at the Royal Academy, which is why he never knew such a reincarnator-friendly system actually existed. But considering their strength, Lest is certain that he and Reeb would probably end up reaching A rank, which would make them stand out too much. Which is why, instead of taking the exam, Lest decided not to do so and just start from the bottom and work their way up. Then, all of a sudden, the atmosphere inside the guild shifted as Gold, the greatsword, showed up. By the aura and attitude he is giving, Lest is quite certain that this Gold guy is clearly not well disposed towards them. As part of a B-rank party, Gold is that type of guy who looks down on others, especially those who don't look strong enough to even become an adventurer just like Lest. As he approaches the two, the receptionist tries to tell Gold that they are just new registrants. But instead of listening, he went on to specifically check Lest up close. There is no denying that Gold has quite an intimidating presence, as Lest would totally agree upon. But instead of letting this big guy intimidate him, Lest decided to stand up for himself and ask this Gold guy if there was a problem with them being at the guild. Without hesitation, Gold went on to inform Lest that, as he observes him, he is quite certain that Lest is still at an age where he would typically just get their skills. On top of that, the fact that the weapon Lest is carrying right now is just a cheap kind made Gold wonder if Lest is really fit to be an adventurer already. After all, being an adventurer isn't such a sweet profession that half-hearted brats like Lest can survive. That is why he wants to intimidate him into leaving, seemingly making the young man feel he is not good enough for this job at all. As the tension rises inside the guild, Reeb decides to take it into her own hands and intervene in Lest and Gold's silent feud. She decided to touch the measuring device, and considering her immense power, she ended up breaking it, causing everyone to shift their attention towards her. Even the receptionist was shocked and in disbelief when she realized Reeb ended up breaking the measuring device with her power alone. This device is made to withstand output up to lower S rank, so for someone like a newbie, such as Reeb, to be able to break it into pieces just goes on to show that she is far more powerful than she looks. Now, this made Lest a little worried, considering the attention that Reeb has garnered from doing that stunt. But it turned out Reeb just did it to call for Gold's attention, with her making it a point to ensure everyone understands that they should all just let Lest be, openly telling Gold that she will always be by Lest's side at all times, so strength isn't really the problem anymore. Meanwhile, the other adventurers inside the guild were also shocked as they realized Reeb actually managed to break the magical power measuring device. Throughout the whole time they joined the guild, this was the first time they ever saw somebody actually breaking it. Now going back to Reeb, since Gold did insult Lest in as many ways as possible through his words a while ago, Reeb now demands that Gold apologize to Lest while he still can. At first, it may seem like Gold is frustrated at what is going on and is now ready to fight with anyone. But to their surprise, instead of shouting in anger, he actually shrieks in amazement, looking quite excited to meet someone who actually managed to break the magical power measuring device. Now, this shocked both Lest and Reeb, considering it was not exactly the reaction they were expecting to see. At that moment, it was finally clear to them that Gold didn't technically hate Lest in any way. It was just his intimidating aura that made things a little tense. But deep inside, Gold actually just wanted to support newbies who seemed inexperienced, hence why he decided to approach Lest. The guild's receptionist was quite aware that Gold isn't really the type that looks approachable, considering how his physique makes him look scary, which is why he is easily misunderstood. Hearing all of this from a receptionist definitely made everyone laugh, and at that moment, it was finally apparent that Gold was actually a good guy. While everyone was busy teasing Gold around, Lest finally went on to talk to Reeb about what she did a while ago. He immediately expressed how shocked he was that she actually defended him like that, to the point that she even used her transition magic. Realizing that Lest actually noticed her trick shocked Reeb, as she never expected he would even see through her plan. Though Lest only noticed it afterward, it was still amazing that he even managed to. However, although Reeb's magical power is strong, Lest still noticed that in pure output, she has not reached the limit of the measuring device the receptionist mentioned. So it is natural to think she used the transition magic's annihilation power to break the device. Although there is no denying that Reeb and Lest have had quite the bad start, but Reeb couldn't help seeing her now master get looked down on by other people. Not because she likes him as a person, but because it also makes her look weak when others look down on Lest. But that set aside, Lest still expressed his frustrations at the fact that Reeb ended up destroying the magical power measuring device on her own, when in fact it was supposed to be a reincarnator event. But since Reeb doesn't have any idea what Lest is talking about, all she could do now is be frustrated at him as well for being angry. Meanwhile, after receiving quite a handful of teasing from his fellow guild members, Gold finally went on to introduce himself properly to the two. Gold is known as the Greatsword, a B-rank adventurer who operates out of this guild. On top of that, he also went on to introduce his fellow party members of the B-rank party that he leads, called the Steel Fangs. Since the group still had some errands and missions to do, it didn't take long before Gold and his team left completely. As soon as the group left, Lest and Reeb finally managed to breathe a little. Now that there was no one to intervene, the two eventually remembered that they haven't even finished registering yet. But for some reason, Lest couldn't deny that he felt as tired as after clearing a dungeon. Seeing how Lest and Reeb's energy literally got drained by Gold, the receptionist just laughs with them, but was still reassuring them that Gold is not a bad person at all, which Lest definitely couldn't agree with. Eventually, after that mini interruption, the two proceeded with their registration. But considering the future, Lest wanted to avoid standing out more than necessary, which is why he insisted that earlier was just a coincidence, and they decided to register themselves as just F-rank adventurers. Considering the strength that Reeb showed, Anna, the receptionist, seemed a bit suspicious, but since this is what Lest and Reeb wanted, she decided to just give them what they wanted in the end and registered them as F-ranks. And so, after waiting for about 30 minutes in the guild, the two finally got their adventurer cards. And on top of that, Lest also saw the perfect first quest that they should take on for their first adventurer mission. As soon as they left, Lest immediately informed Reeb about the dungeon he planned for them to enter. As Reeb checks it out, she eventually realizes why Lest chose this one in particular, considering how reasonably close it is to where they are. With that being said, Lest is planning to conquer it right away, so that they will have more time to check out the other dungeons in the following days. But first and foremost, they will have to take a carriage to the nearby post town, then walk to the location from there. After talking to a bunch of carriage drivers in town, the two finally found one that took them to the said nearby post town Lest is talking about. As soon as they arrived, the two immediately walked to the said dungeon Lest chose. But when they got there, Reeb was speechless as she finally saw it in person. She didn't quite expect that the dungeon was big in person. Just by looking at its grand entrance, Reeb knows this was no easy dungeon to conquer at all. As they walk up the stairs into the main entrance, Lest and Reeb prepare themselves for the worst. This dungeon in particular is actually an A-rank dungeon called the Temple of Deception. This is a dungeon that was impossible to clear on the first attempt of the game, and reportedly required over 10 challenges for complete conquest, which is why it is nicknamed the 10 Death Garbage Gimmick. It is a dungeon that is filled with so many troublesome traps that it earned such a notorious name, but the items one could obtain were definitely worth the risks. Looking at Challenger records, the current exploration rate of this place is just about 30%. Considering this dungeon was discovered half a year ago, that seems like good progress, but it is not that simple at all, which is why Lest and Reeb would also have to give their all if they wanted to get the most out of this short trip to the dungeon. As soon as they arrived inside, the two immediately went on to check the surroundings while maintaining focus on any possible attacks. Upon observing, the two noticed how the dungeon has many paths, as if it were some kind of maze. On top of that, there seemed to be multiple footprints leading the way, which gives the idea that someone came to challenge the dungeon before them. Although chances of them bumping into these people are low, considering how many paths there are in this dungeon, Lest nonetheless decided to keep his costume up and avoid summoning Garel for the meantime. As they got deeper and deeper into the dungeon, Lest tried to remember every detail he knew about this dungeon. One thing is for sure, and that is this dungeon's biggest feature is its diverse array of gimmicks, so Lest is hoping that with the use of his knowledge from his previous life, they would be able to dodge any problem that may come their way. Although Lest and Reeb have no problem taking care of some C-rank monsters that may attack them any minute now, Lest's only problem now is the traps. As Reeb tried to move faster than him and somehow lead the way, Reeb almost stepped on a deadly trap if it weren't for Lest's quick thinking and warning. Most of the paths in this dungeon are indirect gimmicks like dead ends, and there's only one lethal passage, the one with buried landmines. Which is why Lest was pretty shocked at the odds that Reeb actually triggered that only trap on the first try, making him wonder if this girl just had incredibly bad luck. As they keep moving forward through the dungeon, Lest reminds Reeb to maintain her alertness and act a little more carefully, considering this place is a trap hole as a whole. After a few minutes of continuous walking, they finally bump into some monsters. Although the monsters look like they are easy to defeat, but Lest thinks that they should conserve their stamina and magical power, since they still have a long way to go. So instead of using their powers to fight these creatures, Lest thought it would be best for them to use the dungeon's traps to their advantage. With the right technique and execution, as well as planning, Lest and Reeb managed to take down the monster bunnies not by using their firepower, but by utilizing the hidden traps hidden in the dungeon's pathway. Since they have successfully managed to take down the group of monsters, a reward has been granted to them by the dungeon. As Reeb takes a closer look at it, she realizes it's just a low-grade potion. However, for Lest, this is already more than enough. After all, in the Symphony of Swords and Magic, dungeons were described as isolated spaces with their own unique laws, and this is the prime example of it. Monsters that appear in dungeons are generated by the dungeon's magical power and technically aren't living creatures. That's why, after being defeated, they disappear as magical miasma like this, and items drop out of nowhere. Lest and Reeb continue to move forward until eventually they finally reach the midpoint of the said dungeon, where more monsters and trouble awaited.